Call the meeting to order. Thank you. This is the September 9, 2014 meeting of the Fairfield Town Planning and Zoning Commission. First item on our agenda are the bills and communications, the meeting minutes from August 26, 2014.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jacobson. I was not present at the meeting, and I'm only partway through the tape, so I need to recuse myself from this vote. Who are the alternates on for tonight?
All three are presently sitting, so you're a total of 7.
Total of 7. All 3 alternates are voting? Right. I had to get the stick. So,
Mark was here.
right?
Meg was here.
So that's 6.
That's
right?
5. And Meg is sitting, too.
5, 1, 2, 3.
It would be 5.
5. That's 5 left.
Yep.
So that's
As long as
more
it's a
than
majority
quorum.
vote.
Yep. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yep. Good. So, did everybody get a copy of that? Any questions, changes? No? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I abstain. Next item on our agenda, new applications to recommend to public hearing. The first is 785 Umpqua Road, special exception application of the town of Fairfield for additions to Fairfield Ludlow High School in an A zone.
This is just what the item says, a couple of minor additions to Ludlow. It is a special exception, therefore it does require a public hearing.
Can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobson, second by Commissioner Francis. Any questions or comments? All in,
By approve, that means you're approving the scheduling of a subsequent public hearing.
Right.
Right.
motion to move to public hearing. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The item moves to public hearing unanimously. Next is 1150 Post Road, special permit application of Vicente Buren Architects for a garage addition in a central design district.
This was on our agenda a couple meetings ago with a communication breakdown. The applicant did not present, and it was denied. They've resubmitted, and we'll need to schedule that for a subsequent public hearing as well.
Okay. A motion? Motion to move to public hearing by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Francis. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Moves to public hearing unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we move out of executive session and into the public hearing part of the meeting tonight. There's a lot of people here tonight. We want to get through this Kings Highway West proposal. So I'd like to make a motion that we go out of executive session into public hearing. If we have time tonight to go back into executive session.
Okay, motion to take public hearing out of order by Commissioner Alessi, seconded by Commissioner Coleman. Any other comments? I agree. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. Normally, we would go through the rest of our executive session. We have a number of items which would likely take some time for us to go through. We'd like to, we only have the one item on for public hearing, and we'd like to do everything we can to try to get that finished, to start that as soon as possible and to get that finished this evening. So, does anybody else have any comments?
No.
Okay.
If anybody, I think if anybody's here for those, we may take them if we get done, but we also may not. I see people waiting around for 3 hours.
Right.
Some of the more lengthy ones, like.
Well, is there anyone here that came for the executive session items? Okay. We will try to get to those this evening, but we have a lot of items on the public hearing agenda, and we really want to get through this the public hearing on this application this evening. Perhaps what we could do is if we took the compliances next, we likely wouldn't get to that at all.
We could also go back into executive session on the board too.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we just move to the public hearing. We'll come back to those items if we have time. We likely will not have time, and likely we'll hear those at the next executive session in 2 weeks, just so that you all know.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I was thinking specifically of Spruce Street and John Street, which were zone change applications,
Yeah.
which I think we have people here for, which I don't think we'll get to those.
Yeah,
If we get to anything.
Right. I mean, quite honestly, that's going to entail a substantial amount of debate. There's a lot of, there's a lot there that needs to be worked through. And frankly, if we were to take that in order this evening, we would not get through this public hearing tonight. And so, you know, there are, in my opinion, very critical issues that we need to work through on those items, and I want to give those the time that they deserve as well. So I'm in favor of taking the public hearing immediately, and if we have time, moving back into executive session to deal with the compliances. And my feeling is that we will not get to Spruce Street and John Street this evening, and those will be put over to our next hearing.
I can make a motion to table the old business.
No, I don't think that's,
Okay.
I don't think, I personally, I don't think it's necessary. You can if you like, but
That's fine.
we have a motion to take out of order and a second, right? Do we have it?
Mhm.
We do? Any other comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Do we need to reconfigure, or are you ready to go? Okay. So with that, and without further ado, I will call the public hearing. It's 3553 and 3571 Post Road and 886 Kings Highway West. It's the application of Walgreen Eastern Company Incorporated to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned Designed Industrial District and Residence B. That's in item number 1. And item number 2, the special permit and coastal site plan application of Walgreen Eastern Co., Inc., pertaining to the construction of a new retail building. We'll hear both of those items concurrently. For the members of the public who are here, the way this works is that the applicant will have their opportunity to present their application, call their witnesses, make their arguments. We'll then go to public comment. Everyone who has come to speak will have an opportunity to speak. There are no time limits. I would just ask that you keep your comments germane, keep them concise. If you're represented by, you know, in a group, and there is someone who's appearing on behalf of a group of people, you do not have to testify separately and individually. We do understand the representation. Okay? Once the public comment period is closed, then the applicant will get a rebuttal, and the applicant will have the last word on the application. When they're finished with their rebuttal, the hearing will be closed. And it is my hope that we will be finished with this this evening. Our curfew is at 11 o'clock, so if we're not done by 11, then it will carry over to the next session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is John Nuff. I'm an attorney with an office at 147 Broad Street in Milford, Connecticut, and I'm here tonight on behalf of Walgreen Eastern Company, Inc., which is the tenant at the subject property, and also here on behalf of Best Invest Kings Highway West, Southport LLC, which is the property owner of the subject parcels. And Mr. Chairman, it is our hope that we can conclude tonight as well, when we'll try to keep our presentation thorough but concise. As you noted, there are 4 applications regarding 4 different properties located in 3 different zones, which together comprise slightly more than 1 acre in size. There's a zone change on 3 of the 4 parcels from DI and Residence B to Design Commercial pursuant to sections 2.39 and 25.8. There's a special permit for retail use pursuant to 12.4.26, a special permit for excavation pursuant to section 24, and a coastal site plan application pursuant to 2.14, because there's a tiny sliver of our property that is within 500 feet of a coastal resources. All 4 applications pertain to the proposed construction of a 9,000 square foot Walgreens pharmacy with a 3,000 square foot basement, that will replace the existing 13,000 square foot Walgreens located approximately 600 feet to the west in the town of Westport, as I'm sure you all know, in the same center as Home Goods. 3 of the 4 parcels that you're considering tonight front directly onto Post Road, and none of the parcels are zoned residential in their entirety. The existing condition is a patchwork quilt of parcels and zones. Consolidating the 4 small lots and eliminating the multiple zones will create a single, unified, coherent site where we can achieve our 2 primary goals. 1, to create an attractive gateway into Fairfield, something that the town has sought, I think, for decades. And 2, to fully protect the neighbors in the exact same manner as if no rezoning took place. The project team and the property owner have very strong ties and commitment to Fairfield, and I'm including myself in that description. We know and embrace both the storybook charm of Southport and the historic character of Southport. Our affection for the town and the area informed every design decision you'll hear tonight, from access and architecture to landscaping and lighting, so that every detail could reflect a sense of place such that this project is unique unto Southport. This is not a prototype building. This is not a EPIS-covered concrete building being plopped down on Post Road. I think you'll be very happy with what the team has put together in terms of the design of every aspect of this site. As a result of all that attention, the project accomplishes the following critical goals. 1, it creates an assemblage of vacant parcels on Post Road into an attractive gateway into Fairfield, something specifically called for in the Plan of Conservation and Development. The architecture is fully sensitive to and responds to the historic nature of Southport and the neighborhood. It is fully protective of the closest neighbors with an exceedingly robust landscape buffer with no access, no curb cut, no in or out. I can't be more clear about this. There is no way into or off of the site from Kings Highway West. That was part of our original proposal. After meeting with the neighbors, it was removed. The next goal, it meets or exceeds the design commercial zoning standards by proposing a very modestly sized building. At 9,000 square feet and only 26 feet tall, it is appropriately scaled for both Post Road and Kings Highway West. It will blend beautifully with the Garlic and Herb site next door, where the Commission, as you know, recently approved the conversion of industrial and residential zone property to design commercial. It proposes a use that does not produce noise, odors, food waste, smoke, any of the type of things that as a neighbor you'd be concerned about. And it transforms an underutilized site into a meaningful presence on the Fairfield tax rolls. As I noted, before we get into the substantive portion, our team had a series of meetings with Pequot Landing, the condo owners there, our neighbors, and the Sasquatch Association. The result of those meetings, as I noted, was the elimination of the access onto Kings Highway West. We were specifically requested by the condo folks to increase the landscape buffer along Kings Highway West, specifically with the species that they found to be particularly protective of their property, and we have incorporated those, and you'll hear from our landscape architect in that regard. And we also were able to demonstrate to the Pequot Landing owners that no rooftop equipment will be seen from even the uppermost floors of the condominiums. Since then,
That was which parcel?
that was Pequot Landing, which is here located in Brown.
Can you point that again? I'm looking at the same map, but where are you pointing? Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's labeled design residence.
And so they asked you for different landscaping in the corner?
They asked us for different landscaping along the Kings Highway West southern border.
Right,
And as a result of those conversations, we have done that.
thank you.
Since our meetings with the neighbors, we have understood, and I've had a few conversations with Attorney Joel Green, who I understand is representing some, but probably not all of the opposition who's here tonight. We had hoped to continue the dialogue that we had established with the neighborhood. After a few conversations, it became apparent that it was likely to be fruitless, and so we gave up on those attempts. But, I think the commission should know that we made the effort to reach out to our neighbors, and even when represented, we wanted to continue the dialogue, and unfortunately, that was terminated. I want to give you the order of presentation this evening so you know what you're going to be here and from whom. Our first presenter is Michelle Carlson, who's a professional engineer from BL Companies. She's going to be talking about the site design and engineering. Ray Mulbauer, AIA, is an architect with BL Companies. Our landscape architecture is going to be discussed by Joe Kelleher from BL. Joe Bauskas, PE, is our traffic engineer. Mike Fazio, MIA, is a property valuation expert. And then at the very end, I'm going to give you a summary regarding the zone change application. I think it'll have a lot more relevance after you hear some of the details regarding the site. But before I bring in Michelle, I want to do two other things. One, just so I know that the public and the commission is fully oriented as to the parcels that we're talking about. And Michelle, if you have those reduced sets with the zone change map on the front, you can hand these out. I'm asking Michelle Carlson, our engineer, to hand out packets that we'll be referring to tonight. These are...
Give the stack and we'll take one and pass it.
For the most part, these are just reduced size sets for your convenience that are things that we've already submitted into the record.
Is there anything here that was not in the packet?
I believe that there's two renderings of the views along Kings Highway West. So if you just want to take a look at that top sheet for a minute, which is the zone change, a reduced size of the zone change map that we submitted with our application. If you look to the east of the dark hashed line, you'll see parcel 208. And for a point of reference, that's the pink twice as nice building. That's not part of our application. That will remain, but it does give you a good benchmark from which you can evaluate the rest of the properties. The next parcel to the west, parcel 209, that is one parcel and is zoned entirely design commercial. The next parcel to the west, parcel 209A, the front portion along Post Road, probably about, 2/3 of the property is zoned industrial, and the back third is zoned Residence B. And parcel 214, which fronts only on Post Road, that is design industrial in its entirety. And the last parcel, which is 210, that is primarily Residence B, and you can, if you look closely, you can see that there's a sliver that is within the design industrial zone. So we have two split parcels and two non-split parcels, one which is design commercial and the other which is design industrial.
So the light gray solid line that is in between the numbers 214 and 209A that goes north and south, right? North and south?
Yes.
Right?
You're referring to this line that runs
That's
north and
correct,
south?
yeah.
Yes.
So that is a parcel line.
That is the parcel line, and that divides parcel 209A
Right.
from 214 and 210.
And then the dotted line that intersects that line we just identified, that's a zone line.
That's a zone line, yes.
And just above the intersection of those two lines, there is another solid gray line that connects with the corner
Yep.
of 214 and 210 along 211.
Yes, that is the other parcel line. That
Right.
designates the property boundary between 214 and 210.
So on 210, probably 95% of it
Yes.
is
Absolutely.
Residence B, and probably 5% is industrial.
I would agree. Yes.
Right.
And as we'll get to a little bit later, it's sort of a vestige of the 1930 zoning map,
Mhm.
where just sort of, a line was drawn parallel to Post Road, and everything north of that line was commercial, and everything south was residential.
Right.
So,
And just to be clear, although 214 and 210, above and below each other, those are separate lots. 209A is one lot with split industrial and residential.
Exactly.
Commissioner Barrett?
Yes, Mr. Nuff, I don't want to open up the big map, and I can't get it off of this one. Do you know the approximate acreage of the three existing zones that you're trying to assemble? Like, how much is currently the industrial, how big is that residential lot in its entirety?
I know what, my guess is that Michelle or someone on the team can probably figure that out.
Okay.
As we go through the presentation. I can tell you, and I know that I'm not answering your question, all 4 parcels are slightly greater than 1 acre, but we'll figure it out how much each of those separate designations are.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other thing, if we're done with the map for the time being, a little bit out of the ordinary, but I think it's important, before we bring Michelle up to discuss the site plan, I want to bring Sherry Stenick, who's the property owner, and a longtime Fairfield resident, and a longtime member of many commissions and boards. Sherry and I served on this commission many years ago. We're going to be talking in a few minutes about the architectural regs that only apply to the center design district. Frankly, Sherry and I drafted those regulations when we were on the subcommittee, and that's one of the reasons why we want to make sure that this project, even though those regulations are not applicable to this site, we want to make sure that it's still complied with those regulations. So before Michelle, Sherry. I have copies of the resumes for all of our experts. I'm just going to submit one for the record.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sherry Stenick, the property owner. I have a few points I'd like to make, mostly to the audience, as there has been a lot of misinformation about me in this proposal. 1, I'm not a developer. My family has owned the property for decades. 2, I do not work for the town, and I'm not on any official elected or appointed town body at this time. I have not been on any board or commission for over 2 years. Over the last 25 years, I've served on the Water Pollution Control Authority, the Human Services Commission, the Affordable Housing Task Force, the RTM, the ZBA, this body, as well as the Board of Selectmen, and briefly as acting first selectman. I know the town, and obviously I know many people in this room who are for or against it. While my family and I own a number of properties in town, I have not brought any personal property to any board or commission asking for anything benefiting me, my family, or friends while I was involved with the town. This is my first time on this side of the table. It was intentional. That was no accident. It does not put me above anyone because it is how it is supposed to be. I have been presented with many proposals for this site, but did not negotiate with any of them until after I was a private citizen. I now have no greater or lesser value than any other citizen or any other taxpayer in this room. You should know that I lived on Kings Highway West in a house on the residential property we are discussing from 1986 to December 1989 when I bought my own home in town. It was a busy street then, and it's an exceptionally busy street now as a lot of people cut across to avoid the Post Road and I-95 to get to Westport. As one of the neighbors said, I take my life in my hands going to the mailbox. Even back in the 80s, backing out of the driveway was a challenge. The sidewalks for this proposal will be beneficial to everyone. I can't control the traffic on Kings Highway West, but I can assure you that this project, which has no access into or out of Kings Highway West, will not add to it. If anything, I believe it will make it safer. I want to state 2 additional things. My family and I do not now and never did own the Double L Farm Market. The people who sold to Gerlich and Herbs owned that and were on the blight list. I was not. Thank you to the Gerlichs for removing those dilapidated sheds. There is no request to increase the size of the building other than what is allowed. There is no request to reduce parking other than what is required. And at 26 feet tall plus the cupola, we are well below the allowed height of 40 feet. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Now, as promised, Michelle Carlson, our professional engineer.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Carlson. I'm a licensed professional engineer registered in the state of Connecticut. I work for BL Companies at 355 Research Parkway in Meriden, Connecticut. We have met several times with various staff members throughout the compilation of this plan and creation of the plan. We have sign off from Laura Pooley, the town engineer, on our drainage system, which I will go through during my presentation. The existing conditions of the site, which I'm sure you all are aware of, is it's a vacant site right now. There's nothing on it. It's just weeds and dirt and grass. The proposed building, just to give you an orientation, this is the post road right here. This is Kings Highway West, and we're proposing to put a 9,096 square foot Walgreens building with a 3,000 square foot basement on the property right here. There is no access on Kings Highway East. You can't get onto Kings Highway East from this property. All cars, vehicles entering and exiting the property will be from the post road where the existing light is. We're going to add an existing light head to this signal, and this access will be controlled by the signal. That's the only access to the site.
You're adding an access light where?
Well, the existing light is there. We're adding a head to the existing light.
A head meaning?
A signal head,
Okay.
so that a directional head that has green, yellow, red on it, and Joe Balskis will go into that in his presentation, the traffic engineer. But that's where the access is going to be, at the existing light across from Halls Highway.
An existing head facing the
Yeah,
entrance?
I'm sorry. Joe will go through that.
Gotcha. Yeah. To make it a four-way.
Correct. We're proposing 46 parking spaces as part of the proposal. That meets the regulations. We're required to have 45 and change. We're proposing 46. 13 of these spaces are going to be porous pavement, porous asphalt, to take advantage of some infiltration to cleanse some of the storm water that's running off of the site. So these spaces right here along Kings Highway West, and these 3 spaces here will be porous asphalt. The remaining spaces will be traditional asphalt pavement. We're proposing a single service drive-through right here on this part of the plan, on this side of the building. The drive-through is for pharmacy use only. You can only drop off a prescription or pick up a prescription at the pharmacy. You can't purchase anything else in the store. It's only purely for pharmacy pickup and prescription pickup and drop-off. The loading area is on this side of the building, the south side of the building is where they'll be loading. They'll have one small truck to 2 small trucks a week, depending upon needs of the store. Stuff is delivered to the store in tote bins. There's not large crates or anything that comes in, so they'll be delivered with a small truck, and there'll be blue tote bins. The dumpsters will be in this small area here. The facility doesn't generate a lot of trash. They generate more cardboard. Cardboard will be baled and taken off by a local recycling hauler, whoever Walgreens contracts with. And they'll also have a small area for bottles and cans for recyclables if any of the employees are generating that.
What are the proposed hours of operation?
I believe until 10 p.m. Is it 8 to 10?
My guess is that this will probably be a popular question, so let me run through a few things. The hours are going to be identical to the Westport store, and they are Sunday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. The pharmacy, Monday through Friday, 9 to 9. And the pharmacy, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 6. So those would be the hours. The same hours for the pharmacy would be the same hours for the drive-through.
And in terms of deliveries, would those be during business hours only?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we brought a Walgreens operations person here, because we expected
Right.
lots of these questions.
Well, part of
Typically-
the application is to convert that area, that particular area, from a residence zone to a commercial zone, and that's where there's a loading area.
Understood.
Directly across the street is a residential area.
Right.
So I want to understand how that's going to intermix.
Understood. I'll give you the data, and then...
And if now's not the right time to do that, it occurred to me because she was going through the
No, it's fine.
design flow of the site, so.
No, I might as well give you the numbers now. 3 small trucks per week. And state code and state regulations and Walgreens' own policy is that the trucks stop idling after 5 minutes, and that's mandated by Connecticut regulations as well as Walgreens' own policy. There are about 10 smaller, sort of van-sized deliveries per week. Those would be from the local suppliers, and then one UPS truck a day.
Right, the UPS truck, would that also go around the back, or is that like sort of typical commercial delivery where they pull up in the front and they go in and,
My guess is they can go either way, the front
Yeah.
door or the, or around to the loading dock itself.
and when you say 3 small trucks, do you mean like a 10-foot box truck or an 18-wheeler, or?
Well, Michelle's saying a WB-20, that has no relevance to me, and my guess is has none to you. It's
No,
more like-
actually, we just had a whole thing about WB-20 trucks. I know all about them now.
All right, well, maybe you can educate me. No, WB-20 trucks.
It's got a height of 10 feet.
So, and those will come around, and Michelle will discuss the fence and the landscaping that we've located over there as well.
Good, thank you.
There will be no large tractor-trailer deliveries to the
Yeah,
site.
sometimes you see that, it looks like a relatively compact passage there for a
Right,
delivery
so a
truck.
typical Walgreens truck that you see on the highway, one of the
Right.
larger trucks won't be coming to this site.
Thank you.
Okay, we are also proposing, for screening and noise, a 6-foot-high board-on-board fence on the west property line, and all along Kings Highway West, we are proposing a 6-foot-tall cedar board-on-board fence, for the whole length of the property. And in addition to the fence, we have a generous screening here, a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees that Joe Kelleher will describe in more detail. But there is a very generous buffer along here that you can also see on your handout in the packet. We're also adding a bike rack right here so that people can bike to this site if they want to. We are adding sidewalks on Post Road for the whole length of the frontage of the properties. And the same thing on Kings Highway West, we're adding sidewalks. Right now, there are no sidewalks out here. So we are going to add sidewalks on both sides as part of the proposal so that it'll be very pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly. In addition, there is an existing dilapidated bus stop right here on the site. I'm sure you've seen it as you've driven by. We're going to replace that with a nice new bus stop to make it look nice, and it's going to be very pedestrian-friendly. Internally, we're installing 14-foot-high light fixtures interior to the parking lot. They will be colonial style. They're not typical Walgreens shoebox fixtures that you'll see on a typical Walgreens. We made sure that these were going to look good and blend in with Southport and the neighborhood and be unique
Dark
to
sky.
this area.
Dark sky.
Are they dark
Yes,
sky?
yes, they are. Dark sky, we meet all the cutoff requirements. If you look at the photometric plan, we meet your regulations for the photometrics, maximum foot candles, minimum foot candles at property line, and they are dark sky compliant. And there are details on the photometric plan of the fixture.
Yeah. Do you know offhand which plan that those light fixtures are located on?
Yeah, they are on the photometric plan. Would you like me to give you the specific number? They're in the plan set.
Big set, or the one that was?
No,
for
the base set. They're in that set.
OP 100?
Yeah. Right, and it's also LED lighting, so there's not, if you look at the photometric plan, there's not any hot spots on the plan. Do you want me to pull it up?
If I can interrupt Michelle for 1 second.
LP.
On the lighting issue, when we told some neighbors that these parking lot lights are going to be LED lights, there was some concern because of the Athena Diner illegal sign that was posted that was LED.
Which is now no longer lit.
Which is no longer there. I want to make clear for everybody that that sort of sign is nothing what we're proposing here, but LED parking lot lights are much softer lights. It's a much more even light. You don't get those hot spots that you typically get with an incandescent light. So it's a much more neighborhood-friendly type of lighting the site than a typical incandescent light. But I want to make sure that everyone understands it's not the type of Vegas look that the Athena Diner tried to adopt.
And also with, just to regress for a minute, with the board-on-board, the 6-foot board-on-board fence, the 6-foot-tall cedar board-on-board fence on the west property line and all along Kings Highway West, that's going to eliminate any car lights also from shining onto the adjacent properties. That fence will block any car lights or truck lights onto the other properties off the site. We're connecting to public water and gas in Kings Highway as part of the project. There's existing water and gas there. We've contacted all the local utility companies and worked with them to determine where the best spot was to pull the utilities from. Water and gas will come from Kings Highway West. Public sewer, electric, and communications will come from the Post Road, Route 1. For our stormwater design, we've designed the stormwater system to conform to all the stormwater regulations. All post-development flows for the 2 through 100-year storm event are less than the pre-development flows as required. We are implementing groundwater recharge from the porous pavement spaces, as I've mentioned, and we are also installing a rain garden here along Route 1, where stormwater will enter the rain garden first. It will allow for some groundwater recharge, some infiltration, and also for renovation of the stormwater before it flows into our isolator rows, our underground detention system, to control the flow off of the site. We have extensive landscaping around the northeast and south sides. It's a combination of rain gardens, bioswales, deciduous and evergreen type tree plantings. Joe Kelleher will go through that in detail. We have also submitted an erosion and sedimentation control plan as part of the project. We are proposing to put silt fence around the site, silt sacks on the catch basins. In addition, we've shown a stockpile area here for materials that we stockpile that will also be enclosed in silt fence so that no material migrates off of that in a rain event. And we also are proposing a temporary sedimentation basin to collect any runoff prior to being discharged. As Attorney Nuff said, we have submitted a CAM application because a small portion of the Sasko Creek right here is within 500 feet of our proposed properties. So that we had to make the application, the CAM application, and by all of our stormwater management system and all the controls that we're putting in, we are making sure that the runoff from the site meets or exceeds all the regulations. And as I said before, Laura Pooley has agreed to our methods of what we're proposing for stormwater management and renovation on this project. We also have before you a special permit for excavation. There's going to be approximately about 300 cubic yards of material excavated during construction for this project. Approximately 500 cubic yards will stay on site, 2,500 yards will be taken off-site to other construction sites or other places that the developer could use the material. The work will happen Monday through Friday between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. There'll be no work on holidays or weekends. Dust control will be with standard means and methods for erosion control if necessary. There'll be an anti-tracking apron pad that'll be installed at the construction access on Post Road. There will be no construction access from Kings Highway East. The only work at Kings Highway East is to bring in the water and the gas, and that's it. And that's all I have, if you have any questions at this point.
Commissioner Corcoran.
The fence that's going up, the wooden fence. Is that, are there gaps between the boards where headlights could?
No, it's board on board, but there aren't gaps between the boards. They overlap.
Okay, thank you.
The gaps aren't vertical. They're horizontal, so no lights can come through.
Okay.
Anyone else? So, in the code enforcement minutes, Laura Pooley had a couple of things which you may have addressed, but I didn't hear them. Provide a hydrodynamic separator between the catch basin on Kings Highway West and the detention system. Has that been accounted for in the plan?
We will do that as part of the approval, or we just got that information, so we will, I think the three things she wanted was add access to the isolator roll.
We had a code enforcement meeting before we actually submitted our application.
Right.
And we have a follow-up email from Laura that may be part of the record that she sent to Jim. Michelle can address it, but other than adding, I think,
Inspection ports, which we can do.
Yeah, I mean, a number of the things in here you did touch on, and I know are part of the plan. For example, the concrete curbs and sidewalks.
Right, and we do have a hydrodynamic separator on the plans, and then we have the
That's what I'm
isolator
asking.
rows too as part of the Coltech technology, and then all the other items that Laura did put in her September 8th email were minor, and we can add that, and we have no issues with her email.
No issues with
No.
that. Another thing that she mentions is an additional pedestrian ramp at the crosswalk near the bus shelter that should be located near the pedestrian button pedestal.
Right,
Um,
that's right in here.
Okay, so these items were either addressed in the plan
Or will be, we
or
take
will
no
be.
issues with them, yeah, we can,
No issues with any of these
No.
conditions for approval?
no.
Okay. Is the sidewalk width 5 feet?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Going to have Ray Mulbauer, the architect, get up and,
Very good. Thank you.
As Ray approaches, I just want to point out that, as I mentioned, we had some meetings with the neighbors. They, hold on one second, Michelle. There was a concern about the sidewalk that we're proposing on Kings Highway West. We know that's a requirement, so we left it on the plan. We take no issue with whether the sidewalk is there or not. Is our understanding that the commission has a strong preference for it. Some neighbors, I can't say all, prefer not to have it. We're happy to have it either way, frankly, but we want to show you that we can accommodate that if it's the commission's desire.
What's your understanding of the
The neighbor's concern, it was,
Yeah.
I think it's just primarily aesthetic. I'm sure you'll hear from them a little
All right.
later.
very good.
Good evening. My name is Ray Mulbauer. I'm an architect with BL Companies, and I'm licensed in the state of Connecticut. We are the architect for the proposed design for the Walgreens. From the outset, we knew that this was going to be a very important and sensitive site. This site, as small as it is, carries a lot of weight. It's not only a gateway as you enter into Southport, but it's also a transitional site that separates a very busy retail and commercial corridor from a very beautiful residential neighborhood. So that's a lot of weight for a small site to carry, and we understand that. The goal was to design a building that complies with the architectural and community appearance standards, and most importantly, one that's compatible with the neighborhood. So we did tour the neighborhood. We got a sense of the houses in the neighborhood, the design aesthetic in the neighborhood. We met with the town staff and listened to feedback. And so as we began to conceptualize what this would be, one thing was clear, and Attorney Nuff mentioned it before, this was not going to be a prototypical Walgreens building. So the rendering that you see here is actually one of our initial concepts to try to interpret how we were going to make this building not a Walgreens prototype, but something that would be very compatible and fitting for the neighborhood and for Southport. And the result of that study is a building that you see here that on the roof has gable forms and dormers that are very typical of what you'd see in the neighborhood. And you'll notice that the roof raises to a point that it hides the rooftop units that are shown behind here, which is very important. There is a corner element made up of gables with a small cupola on top, which is simply an indication of where the entrance would be. And you'll notice on that, on the entry gables there, which face Boston Post Road and face the parking lot, there are two small Walgreens signs, which are in fact smaller than what's allowed by code. And everybody here who knows retailers know how much they like their signs. But again, what was appropriate for this location and appropriate for the neighborhood was a sign that we think is of this proportion. The roof material is typical of the materials we'd find in the neighborhood, the asphalt shingles, an architectural style shingle. The walls of the building are reflective of cedar shakes. They are in fact made out of a cement board material The reason we chose that is it has much more dimensional stability than wood, looks identical to it, and it holds paint much better. So over the years, you won't see paint peeling off of it as quickly as you would from a natural cedar shake. The windows are meant to look very much like residential windows. They're not big sprawling storefront windows. They're windows that are divided lights that are made to look like double hung windows where the top sash has divided muntins. And below the, yeah. And then below that is a stone plinth or a stone base around the building. And so looking at the elevations now, just to get a little bit more specific about what I was talking about, the roof material is asphalt shingles, and they're what we call the architectural style shingles, so they're textured and carry shadow lines to make them look a lot more interesting than a flat shingle. The walls, as you can see here now that there's more detail in this than there was in the rendering, the walls are the cedar shake-like material made out of cement board. All of the windows are trimmed, very much like you would find throughout the neighborhood, again in cement board. The doors and windows are aluminum framed. They are clear glass. They're not opaque windows, so you can actually see into the store. And as I mentioned, they are fashioned to look like double hung windows, so there are muntins on the upper sash and open clear on the lower sash. The elevation that you're seeing at the top here, the east elevation, faces the parking lot, which in turn faces the apex of Boston Post Road and Kings Highway. The elevation below that on your drawings is the north elevation, and it faces Boston Post Road, so that's really the primary elevation you see as you're driving by. And again, all the windows there are clear glass windows, so you can see into into the store. The elevation below that faces, that's the west elevation, that faces the Gerlich and Herb. And again, we're carrying the same materials all the way around. We're not treating this as, you know, backs and sides where you can use a cheaper or a different material. There is a drive-through window on that elevation. And then the final elevation at the bottom is the south elevation, and that's what faces across Kings Highway. And this elevation has the doors that we were talking about before for the access and deliveries. And again, is made up of the same materials that we've talked about on the other elevations. For the most part, that elevation is going to be a challenge to see because of the fence and because of the plantings, which over time will become, of course, more mature, and you'll hear about that momentarily. And just for clarity, there is just one pair of windows that are obscured. They're frosted glass, and those are the windows that are on the north elevation right under the little gable there. And we felt that the windows were needed for the appearance, but because of the functions behind the glass, it's really a challenge to try to make them clear. It just wouldn't make any sense.
And what is that? What is the rationale there? I don't understand.
Behind that, there are fixtures and things that you'd be basically looking at the back of them.
Internal
store fixturing.
I mean, like
shelving and that sort of thing.
I see.
And finally, what you're looking at here is a section. So on the plan here is the area in white is the site, and there's a red section line drawn through it. That section line runs through the Walgreens store, across Kings Highway, and then catches the corner of the building at Pequot Landing. And we think this is a very important section, and it was part of how we considered how to make up the building and how to design the roof line. If you look up above at the top part of that sheet now, you'll see in the section on your left is the proposed Walgreens, and all the way on the far right is the edge of the building at Pequot Landing, the three-story residential condominium building. We thought it was very important to make sure that even from the third floor, that your sight lines across the roof would be blocked by the roof so that you weren't looking at rooftop units. And so really when you're looking even from the third floor of the building across at that building, all you're going to see is a clean roof line. You will not see equipment on the roof. Are there any questions?
Commissioner Corcoran.
You mentioned that this is a gateway building. How do you see this as a gateway building?
Well, I think one of the things is that any town would expect in establishing sort of a gateway presence is to have a building that speaks of the design aesthetic of the town. And looking around Southport, it's really full of beautiful and historic buildings, and therefore having something that was of more of a colonial style with either, you know, a choice of clapboard or shingles as the wall material, trimmed windows, divided muntins. That's the sort of thing that makes sense to me to see along a major thoroughfare as you enter the town.
Another question. Is there going to be a sign on the post road?
I don't believe we have indicated a sign on Post Road, is that correct?
There will be a sign on the building itself, both on the Post Road side and on the parking lot side, and there's also going to be a pylon sign that's 15 feet high on the Post Road.
Is that on the drawing?
It is.
Michelle Carlson again. If you look on your actual site plan, in your plans, it's approximately right here. Excuse me, right here. You see that sliver of a rectangle just off of the edge of the parking on the west side? Right here?
And how high is that?
15 feet. 15 feet. It's right here.
Commissioner Corcoran, until you're done. Go ahead.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Will that sign be taller than the trees around it?
I will let Joe answer that. This is a rain garden, so this is a portion of the site right here that's lower. So this won't have trees that'll grow up around it. The flowering trees are on the streetscape side of the rain garden. So back here around this sign, no, it'll be lower vegetation.
I just have one more question.
Please.
When I looked at this drawing,
Floor plan?
yeah, it says that the basement is 3,000 square feet, which I would expect to be about a third the size of the first floor, but it doesn't look like it's even close to that.
Yeah. I didn't see a rendering in the plans. Did you? Rendering the sign?
It's not scale. That's their fixturing plan, and that's just.
Unless it's here.
It's through, we just were talking to another one of our engineers, and he said through iterations with Walgreens, it's actually going to probably only be about 1,500 square feet.
The basement's approximately 50.
It's getting smaller as they've been going through their planning while we've been going through
Okay.
this process.
Thank
So it's
you.
going to be less than 3,000.
Okay. Commissioner Jacobson.
I just have a question about the sign. Well, that sign, we have new sign regulations. They'll be consistent with the regulations, or you're going to submit a separate application, or?
Yes,
The whole sign?
as I mentioned, the signs on the building are actually smaller than...
Right, yeah, I'm not,
Is
those
you're
are
referring to
good,
the pylon
yeah.
sign?
I'm referring to, you said there was going to be a 15-foot pole
Yeah.
sign?
Yes, and that
No,
will
not a
conform to the
pole sign.
regulations, and a sign permit will be applied for. And that's going to be right here, on the back side of the rain garden.
Okay, I thought you said pole sign,
No, pylon.
pylon sign, okay.
Pole signs are not permitted, so it's a pylon sign.
It's going to conform to the regulations.
Okay, great.
And it's
Thank
15
you.
feet tall.
Right, but that's not a rendering. That's, so, Commissioner Barrett.
Yeah, I think they asked, I would just ask, we don't have there's no rendering of this sign today, so, should this application be approved, would you I think you would have to submit a full sign plan with all the renderings, exact lettering, exactly what it's gonna look like, because that's what we approve. We can't just approve a spot on a map where it's gonna go.
Understood, correct.
Okay.
So just to be,
The signs on the building themselves will remain the size that are
Yeah.
depicted on the site plan today.
Yeah, those, we do have a size on, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Knapp.
Mr. Mulbauer, is it?
Yes.
Oh, thanks. I was looking at the aerial view. This site is over 9,000 square feet. Beyond the aesthetic changes, would this otherwise conform? I noticed this reminded a little bit of the entranceway, the two kind of entry points on the corner, reminds me of the Jennings Road CVS, for example. Is this sort of a standard design for Walgreens, the core building beyond the aesthetics? Is that similar to what you do in other locations, or?
It's relatively close.
Relatively close.
They're typically a rectangular shape.
Right.
And the
With this
fixturing
corner
layout is relatively
entrance.
typical. But
So
the building shell is entirely different than anything that...
In a sense, the aesthetic elements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, if I may add, it's also a lot smaller. A typical prototypical Walgreens is 14,850 square feet on one story. And this is only 9,096 square feet in area, so it is smaller.
Oh, really? And the reason I ask is because there was a proposal for a Walgreens in my neighborhood, actually, in Stratfield, and that was going to be on the site of a supermarket that was about 9,800 square feet. So, I don't think that we're going to go beyond that footprint, so I guess it's not completely atypical to build something smaller than 10,000.
No, it's not atypical to build something
It's
smaller,
smaller.
but they're prototypical where what they'd like to
Right.
build is the 14,850, but
Got it.
they recognize, the community also, that has a play in it too, the size of the property, the community, where they're going.
Yeah, and CVS and Rite Aid are approximately the same size.
Right,
So they're
similar.
typical prototypes, which are around
They're studied.
14,000. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, one more question?
Commissioner Barrett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know relatively how big the one in Westport that you're replacing is? How many square feet is that?
13,000 square feet.
Okay, so this is 4,000 square feet smaller. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
And our next presenter is Joe Kelleher, who's our landscape architect. But we've been able to do some quick math for Commissioner Barrett's. And so if you want to jot these numbers down, the area that's changing from Residence B to DC, or what we're proposing to change from Residence B to DC, is 4/10 of an acre, which means all of Lot 210 and approximately a third of Lot 209A. And the portion that we're proposing to change from design industrial to design commercial is 44/100 of an acre. That's all of 214 and approximately 2/3 of 209A.
0.44.
Point 44?
0.44, 44/100.
So about 20,000 square feet roughly for that. And
Yeah,
A little less for
yeah.
the residents. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And next is Joe Kelleher.
Hi, I'm Joe Kelleher, work for BL Companies, and I'm a licensed landscape architect in the state of Connecticut. Just want to go over the site plan in respects to the landscaping that we'll be proposing out there. Really, there's kind of two primary goals of our landscaping here. One is to enhance the streetscape along Post Road, and the other is to provide buffer and screening for the residential areas along Kings Highway West. Talk first about the streetscape along Route 1. Some of the things we're proposing are flowering street trees. There's two varieties here. One is a dogwood species, and it's a cultivar which is specifically developed to have minimal disease problems. The other is a upright style flowering cherry, which gets like a pink flower. The upright nature is kind of meant to just not have wide-spreading branches. I will say that this whole plan, I was in contact with the tree warden, Ken Flacco, and he'd seen the plans in a preliminary form. He had some recommendations in terms of species that he'd like to see, and we've revised the plans to reflect his recommendations. That's where the upright cherries came from. It's a new one for me. Moving down to Kings Highway, I'm sorry, I'm going to back up a little bit. I want to talk about this rain garden a little bit along Post Road. So this rain garden is kind of filled with different types of flowering shrubs. There are several native species in there. One of the species that's in there is winterberry, which has a very nice red berry for the winter. There's also a shadbush, which has a really nice white flower in the spring, and is kind of a bit more of an upright, multi-stem small tree. And the third one is a arrowwood viburnum. Again, has a white flower. All of these are native species. They're really good for the different birds and insects around Connecticut, and they're all also meant to withstand the conditions that you would encounter in the rain garden there, kind of periodically inundated with water, other periods of drought, so that they'd be very well adapted to survive in that area. Moving down to Kings Highway West, Michelle talked a little bit about the board-on-board privacy fence, the cedar fence that would run through here. That alone would almost, block the view of headlights and into the site from the residents. But in addition to that, we are proposing a buffer, which the species had been kind of recommended by the neighbors. There are green giant arborvitaes, as well as a cultivar of blue spruce, and also some more of those upright flowering cherries along there. And we didn't want to just have one big run of evergreen trees, so we made a real effort to kind of have a varied landscape and something that would kind of blend with some of the other plantings across the street. The parking lot area has a few large shade trees to provide some shade out there to minimize the heat island effect. Three of those trees is a cultivar of American elm that's been developed to be resistant to the Dutch elm disease. Those trees, in conjunction with some of the other natives, we're really making an effort to not only provide something that's really going to live out there because they're native to our area, but also just to fit in with the character. I mean, there used to be a lot of elm trees all over the state of Connecticut, and they've really took a beating. And now with these new hybrids, we're trying to use opportunities to reintroduce those elm trees. I wanted to talk a little bit about the growth of these trees here. So the trees that are going to be providing the screening, there's two main evergreen species, one of which would be installed at a 7-foot height at installation. The other is an 8-foot height at installation. The green giant arborvitaes have an extremely fast growth rate. Probably grow close to 2 feet a year, so they're being installed at 7 feet. A year later, they could be 9 feet with good conditions. The blue spruce variety is quite the opposite. It's a slow-growing cultivar. The straight species of blue spruce would get way too big for here. These really only get about 15 to 20 feet tall. And they're a slow-growing form, maybe only 6 inches a year. What else can I tell you? There's a few within these islands. There's also some understory flowering ground cover plants This one has a liriope, which is the common name is lily turf, and it's kind of a spreading grass-like plant that gets a purple flower. A couple other areas have reblooming daylilies in them. When you kind of look at the plant list as a whole, we have spring flowering perennials, we have flowering trees, deciduous shade trees, as well as evergreen trees and shrubs. Are there any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Commissioner Coleman?
Did you consider putting any landscaping around the building itself? It still looks like a square box with a few eaves on it.
There is a few small areas for landscaping here, but mainly most of the landscaping is in the perimeter. I think that was a little bit just due to the small size of the site. There are some plantings of shrubs on this corner and some shrubs and ground covers on this corner as well.
Commissioner Francis?
What is the height of the dogwood and flowering cherries on the north side?
Okay, so I'm just going to look at my plan here.
Near the
The
rain
dogwoods, well, they don't really sell them by height when you get to a tree like that. It's sold by the caliper of the trunk. We're specifying a 2 to 2.5 inch caliper here. I would guess that would be probably an 8 to 9 foot tall plant. The cherry trees might actually be a little bit taller, only because they're a very upright growing.
No, I meant the mature height.
Oh, the mature height.
About 20.
15 to 20 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the cherry would be taller?
The cherry's about 20 feet.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay. And what were these two varieties on the end here, the east end?
Which?
The two on that end?
Over here?
Yes.
Okay, so it might be kind of hard to see, but the lighter green, these three,
Yeah.
those are the elm trees, American elm, Valley Forge variety. The three in the middle here is a thornless common honey locust. It's a fairly common urban tree. Basically been chosen because, with the exception of the island here, there's a lot of asphalt around them. Those trees are really good at surviving in urban conditions, and they also provide a really nice dappled shade. It's not a heavy shade from those trees. They have very small leaves, so it creates a nice dappled effect.
Then, Mr. Chairman, what's the relationship with our new tree committee?
Well, so one of my questions was whether you're familiar with the recently passed regulations for trees and parking lots and such.
Yes, and when this plan was developed, the trees were on that list. Again, I talked with Ken Flacco, and he made a couple recommendations as far as the specific cultivars, but he was happy with the plants that were on the plan.
Is your understanding that this complies with the regulations that we passed?
Yes, there was also a regulation in terms of number of shade trees per parking spot. I'm having a hard time remembering exactly what regulation, but I believe we needed 5 shade trees, and we're providing 6.
Anyone else? I have a question about the buffer along Kings Highway West.
Sure.
All of that is on the street side of the fence, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm being prompted to show the renderings. So these are 2 renderings here, which are a artist's representation of what the screening plantings could look like.
That looks like it's a perspective from a neighbor's house across the street.
Yes.
Is there a stone wall over there? I don't think so. I don't know, but, yeah. Anyway,
So that's that one. You can see Walgreens, you can see the roof back there. You can also see the cedar fence here. The program that made this has a fairly limited, they don't have every cultivar of every tree, so there's a couple evergreens, a couple deciduous, so it's more diagrammatic than the exact tree species, but you can see kind of a staggered row of evergreens here interspersed with some flowering trees. I'll flip to this next perspective, and this is looking kind of down Kings Highway west here, Walgreens on the right. This is the cedar privacy fence, again the staggered row, and we're showing the proposed sidewalk here as well.
right.
Mr. Chairman, a question?
Yep, yep, thank you. So will Walgreens maintain the buffer zone and all of the trees that are in that?
Yes, the trees
site?
will be on the town's property, but Walgreens will be responsible for retaining, maintaining them.
Commissioner Coleman?
How many years of growth before the reality would match the renderings? What does this represent as far as the planting timeline?
The evergreens here are probably only about a year away. This is a 6-foot-high cedar fence. The plant's being installed at 7 feet. This shows them roughly at 8 feet. Within a year, the evergreens would be that big. The deciduous trees will probably never be that big. Again, it's a limited plant palette with this program. The trees that we're proposing are much more upright style tree, so would never get that wide, but they would probably reach a mature height in 15 years.
And is the mature height that height?
Pretty close.
Yeah, that may be the height.
I would estimate that that's showing it at about 15 feet tall.
And what is the mature height of the trees that are being installed?
15 to 20 feet.
Okay. Is there anything else in the rendering that will never come into fruition? I mean, I don't mean to be, I don't mean to be sarcastic or, about it. It's a great question.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
And I do understand the limitations of programs.
Yeah.
And to that end,
Yeah.
is there anything else that...
Well, I would just want to say that
preference?
we've kind of provided these because, not everybody can read a 2D plan. This, I think, gives an idea of what it would look like, and then while all the exact heights and species aren't shown, with complete accuracy, I think the overall intent shows what we're doing. It shows the approximate spacing as well as the approximate density of plants.
And in fairness, when you first introduced the renderings, you stated that
Yeah.
the program had its limitations and that all the species were not represented and that it was different. So, I don't want you to take offense to my question. I thought it was a very good question that Commissioner Coleman asked, or Commissioner Francis.
Can I follow up with another question? The eventual mature height of green giant, they're huge. And won't they dwarf the trees around them? I mean, what do you think this is going to look like after 15 years when the green giants have reached maturity?
Well, the green giants, they have a very strong central leader, so they're never very wide at the top. They definitely get wide at the bottom and fill in, but the most of the height will be up. They're spaced about, with the stagger, they're spaced about 10 feet, so after a few years they will fill in on the bottom, but up on the top there will always kind of be that spacing just because of how conical shaped they are.
So you're thinking maybe 40 feet?
The 35, 40 feet, that's probably a mature height. It probably is going to be 20 years from now before they're at that height.
And then they will choke out or really block the sun. I know that they're columnar, but they'll block the sun for the flowering trees, right?
Not necessarily, because the flowering trees that we're proposing there are sort of, they're not on the north side of the evergreens. So if you had a complete line of evergreens and a tree just on the south of it, you're not providing any shade to that tree. So all these flowering trees here don't have evergreens to the south side of them, so they presumably won't be shaded by the trees themselves.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we leave the topic of landscaping, I just want to make clear that, our primary goal along Kings Highway West is to provide that landscape buffer, and that's why it was important that we felt to be conservative in what we're depicting in terms of the evergreens. As I mentioned, and you may not have caught it, those species were in part selected by the folks at Peapod Landing because they've had particular success with it themselves, and they asked for us to incorporate it into our plans. So I think in terms of providing a true buffer, we're being very conservative with the depiction of those evergreens, and I think the depiction of the deciduous trees, as Joe said, is just a limitation of the program. But we're not really relying upon the deciduous to create the buffer for the neighbors.
Well, so there looks to be about 4 different varieties of trees in the buffer zone there. Is that?
There are, well, if you count the little shrubs that are kind of a bookend, but...
Not counting the shrubs on the end.
Not counting the shrubs, there are 2 species of evergreen. One is kind of that dark, really dark green. The other is a lighter minty green. Those are the 2 evergreens, and then there's 1 species of flowering tree. So there's 3 species within the buffer.
3 total?
Yes.
And one of those was recommended or suggested?
Both of the evergreen species were recommended by the neighbors there. Yeah. And the flowering cherry was a recommendation from the tree warden.
From the tree warden.
Because it needed to comply with the street tree planting, which
The street tree
has to
regulation.
happen at a specific interval. So
Right.
I was explaining to him that we were very limited with space, and it was his recommendation to go with an upright variety of cherries. So all 3 of the 3 species there were recommendations from different folks within the town.
And the other concern that Ken had was the fact that there's overhead lines, which are not shown on the rendering, of course, but you want to make sure that there won't be a need sometime in the future to have to trim those trees and to get sort of bizarre donut tree effect.
Yeah,
Well, that's
so
part of the reason why I asked about the care and maintenance.
On the rendered plan, there's a dashed line on there which indicates and those haven't been fully surveyed, but that indicates the approximate location of the overhead lines there. The majority of our plantings are actually behind the power lines towards the interior of the site.
Right. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Joe Balskas. He's our traffic engineer, and he's a professional engineer with Ty and Bond. I'm handing out a sort of very mild revision to our original traffic plan, and it was precipitated by the closure of the access way at Kings Highway West. So our original traffic plan showed some traffic entering that site, presumably if you're coming from the south, but as a result of our, as I said, our discussions with the neighbors and the fact that we have closed that curb cut, that access way. That traffic that Joe had allocated to that driveway has now been reallocated to the Post Road site, and as you'll hear, it really makes no difference, but we did want to cover our tracks and provide an update to the original traffic.
For the record, my name is Joe Balskis. I'm Director of Traffic and Parking for Ty and Bond, with offices at 1000 Bridgeport Avenue in Shelton, Connecticut. I am a licensed professional engineer, state of Connecticut. I also carry a national certification as a professional traffic operation engineer. And as Attorney Neff noted, I'm going to give a brief presentation on the traffic study that was submitted back in May, as well as the memo you have in front of you, which, as you mentioned, details the revised analysis that we undertook for eliminating the site drive in Kings Highway West. So for the traffic study, you've seen a number of traffic studies in the past. We did our normal traffic study efforts. We observed the operations during the peak hours. We looked at the intersections nearby. We also determined the study area to be the adjacent intersection of Hulls Highway, Kings Highway West, and Center Street. And we based that study area on the 100-trip rule that the State Traffic Administration gives us in terms of when you generate traffic from development. Your study area is determined by proximity to the site as well as how many trips you're generating. And I'll go into that in a little more detail, but basically that study area is determined by the 100-trip rule that we have for this project. As I mentioned, we have conducted observations during the peak hours. We've been out here during the peak hours, observing traffic flow at Hulls Highway intersection, at Kings Highway, and Center Street. So we have a pretty good feeling of what's going on out there during the Friday afternoon peak hour and a Saturday midday peak hour. Those are your retail peak hours you look at for a pharmacy type development. We conducted traffic counts. Manual turn and traffic counts were conducted at the intersections. We went out there and physically counted cars and pedestrians and bicyclists at the intersections during the Friday afternoon peak hour as well as Saturday midday peak hour. We also compared those counts to historical counts from DOT. DOT has counts going back 20 plus years. We looked at the last 10 years for traffic volumes on the Post Road. And we found that actually traffic volumes have gone down. From 2004 through 2013, as an example, and this is actual traffic counts on the Post Road at the Westport Town line, where in 2004 there's 24,300 cars a day on the Post Road. That's down to 21,200 cars a day in 2013. And we actually found less volume this year when we did our count out there. So volumes have been trending downwards. And that's systemic to what's going on around the country. A lot of states are seeing a downward trend in traffic volumes from numerous factors, from the economy, telecommuting, less teenagers driving. So we're seeing that. That's happening a lot of places. So Route 1 in this location has seen traffic volumes go down since 2004. Okay? Route 1, Post Road, as we know, busy road. It's 4 lanes, as you know, in the area. It's a major roadway. It's outside the 95. It's a principal arterial roadway. It's a pretty straight section through here. Posted speed of 35 miles an hour. We found speeds a little higher in terms of the posted speed from our traffic count. There's a pedestrian crosswalk across Post Road at this site, across from Hulls Highway. We also looked at the accidents in the area. We looked back the last 3 years, the study area intersections. And we found 3 accidents at Hulls Highway intersection in the last 3 years reported. So there's not a accident history or pattern here at the intersections. There's not a problem in terms of accidents. There's no pattern of significant rear-end collisions at these intersections. And that dovetails with what we saw in the analysis, that these intersections operate very well, actually, during the Friday afternoon and Saturday midday peak hour. They operate very well, very favorable. Not level service F, not level service D. When 95 is obviously working and not backed up, the intersections work very well.
If you have a moment, Commissioner Barrett.
Sure. Yes, Mr. Balskis?
Mr. Balskis.
Balskis, I'm sorry, I apologize.
No problem.
I've got it. What area did you look at for the accident history? Could you describe like who you asked and where you got that from and
Sure,
what
absolutely.
area covered in the last years?
Let me do this. This is an aerial map. I
I think you should be able to see it okay. You can certainly see Post Road right here. This is obviously 95, as you see here. Kings Highway West here, and the site is right here, Hulls Highway. So our study area, as I mentioned, was basically Hulls Highway, Kings Highway West, unsignalized, and Center Street. Those are three intersections that we looked at for our study area. Those are the intersections we reviewed for accident history. We went to the DOT files, and they keep a comprehensive database of reported accidents to the Motor Vehicle Department. And in that database, we found that only 3 were reported here in the last 3 years at the Hulls Highway intersection.
Okay, so you didn't go to the left, to the,
In Westport, no.
Westport.
We did not, no.
Because I don't know if you know that, I mean, accident history, I'm aware of that, like just a few feet over the border, a pedestrian was killed within the
Yes,
last couple of years.
we are aware of that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah,
So-
yeah, there's a heavy pedestrian activity over here, it's been looked at in the past, we are aware of that, yes. We did not look at that, that's in Westport, looked at for Fairfield,
Yeah,
but we are aware of that.
I understand it's a town line, but there's no barriers between going from one town to another. And then I have another question while I've got the floor. Just, could you, when you're going through your traffic report, could you just explain, the delays? That would be table 1 in your new report, like, you know, the level of service, you know, why it's operating that well. You have, the Post Road is operating, the eastbound and westbound level of service A, with that traffic signal. The other one, it really looks like it's an E at Center Street. Could you just talk about like why that's 56 seconds and the Post Road is?
Sure. Let me explain for the commission what these tables mean. This table is a level service table. As you know, level service A to F, A being the best and F being the worst.
Yeah.
And we also show delays of seconds per vehicle next to the letter. And what you see for overall is the overall intersection. How the intersection itself is calculated to be operating at what level of service. We also broke out individual approaches to the intersection. So you can see for the existing conditions, the background conditions being just before this would open, and combined being the future, the operations of those approaches through those intersections. So as you noted, I think you said level service E for the intersection of Kings Highway West and Center Street, that intersection there, and that shows level service E straight across for the Center Street northbound approach.
But you're not impacting that at all.
Correct.
Based on this table.
Correct. And you read it, the key issue with traffic studies is looking at the background to combined.
Yeah.
That's where our impact is. That's where if we're gonna have an impact, you can see there. Because background is just background traffic and growth. But when we add our traffic, our 100 vehicles to the network, we're not impacting the approach level service on Center Street. We are impacting some other approach level service, as you see there. You look through there, you can see Hulls Highway goes from a C to a D. We're impacting that, but the delay is very, very minimal increased delay. And then you go to the second table, the next page, that shows the vehicle queues. And that basically gives you the length of your backups that you'll have on these approaches. So when we look at a level service, we also look at queues. What does that mean? How much more am I adding? Am I adding 100 feet more? We're not, obviously, with the low volume that we have. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. The only thing, it really looks like most of those other intersections, or other directions that those intersections are really impacted. The only thing I note that looks as changes, the Walgreens driveway, which doesn't exist today, so that's a complete.
Correct.
That's going from nothing to.
No, from a T
something
intersection to a four-legged intersection, and I'll walk you through that as well, how it's gonna operate. All right, where was I now? Okay, I was talking about, I guess the accidents, okay. All right, so next step, what we'd talk about would be the actual trip generation. And we know the Walgreens is in Westport now, it's moving here to a smaller size store, and you could maybe take credit for some of that. We did not. We basically took this as a brand-new location. Well, that could be infilled in the future, obviously. This is considered a brand-new Walgreens location, new traffic, and we generate traffic based upon dozens and hundreds of studies of Walgreens across the country. But in this case, we use the State Traffic Administration numbers in our generation. And they're very good. They're very good numbers. We use those numbers and apply it to this site, okay? And based on that, about 130 cars, as you see in the table there, being generated by this site in the afternoon peak hour, a weekday, and Saturday a little bit less, like 100. That doesn't take into consideration any pass-by traffic. I'm already on Route 1, Post Road, I'm driving by, oh, I gotta get deodorant. I'll stop into the Walgreens and get something there. That doesn't count for that. This is just saying traffic that's added to the site itself. So it's actually less than that. We're allowed about 20% reduction. The State Traffic Administration allows us to reduce 20%.
I'm sorry.
It's actually higher than that.
Joe,
Sure, I can explain it a little more.
I'm
You're
confused.
I saw it in your eyes, I saw it in your eyes. All right, so here's what I want to say.
What could you take a credit for?
If you, for a Walgreens being built here, we generate traffic as originating to Walgreens. You're going to come to Walgreens. You are setting out your house, you're going to go to Walgreens. That's what the 130 trips is for, okay? Reality is that there's already people on the network now driving saying, oh, I'm going to stop in the Walgreens. I'm already going by there for something else. I'm going to stop in there. So their origination is not their house to go to Walgreens. They're already somewhere else on the roadway, then going to Walgreens. We're allowed to take a credit for that. It's like a Dunkin' Donuts, for instance. You go to Dunkin' Donuts every morning, you're going to work, you stop in there. So it's similar to this in terms of you were going to change the route a little bit, go to the Walgreens, and then leave. We're allowed to take a 20% reduction of 130 by State Traffic Administration. It's actually higher. It's actually higher.
And you're allowed to take the reduction because you...
Studies have shown it's 40 to 50%, and the State Traffic Administration likes to be conservative. So they go with much less than that.
Studies have shown. So, in other words, you presumably you do traffic studies for Walgreens all over the place, right?
Yes.
And the studies that you're referring to are those which Walgreens has done?
And the State Traffic Administration has done as well, their own studies as well.
Okay.
Yes.
And so they're comparing the data that they estimate with actual counts?
Correct.
And they've learned that their estimates are too high?
They have learned that the pass-by numbers are 40, 50% or higher, but they set the bar low to be conservative, so they're only allowing 20%. So we can reduce our traffic generation by 20%. In reality, it's more like 40, 50%. Okay, so when I'm telling you 130 cars, there's going to be 100 new cars on this roadway for our site. It's actually less than that because reality is that there's much more traffic on this roadway network that's going to be used in the Walgreens than we're allowed to take credit for.
So the users of the site are not going to be additional cars on the roadway. They're going to be folks who are already going home, and they're just going to stop in. So it's not an additional car based upon the commercial location.
Correct.
And so forth.
Exactly. Okay, is that clear for everyone? Everyone understand that?
Well, actually, 50% of the 130 is really what it comes out to.
That's what we
So
see,
it's like
exactly.
65 cars,
Yeah.
really.
But what we do as traffic engineers is that be conservative. So we're using conservative numbers, a conservative credit, and we're still about 100 cars generated, and those are 100 cars that we then add to the network in our analysis. So we do our analysis, exists in the background, then add the 100 to it, then that gives our impact. Okay. Now the 100 cars, where are they all going? This is obviously, this roadway, Post Road carries, I said 21,000 cars a day. In the peak hour, Friday afternoon peak hour, is about 2,300 cars up and down Post Road, okay? It's usually about 10%. Your peak hour is usually about 10% of your daily traffic. So Saturday is about 2,100, the peak hour. So we're taking those 100 cars, right, and going to add it to 2,300 cars in that peak hour. So very small percentage. And not only that, we're spreading them out. Some are going to go to Westport, some are going to go Southport, some are going to go north on Hills Highway, some go to the south. Okay? So you're dispersing your traffic to the network. So not all 100 cars going in one direction. They're going 45% to the east, 45 or so percent to the west, some to the north, some to the south. So those 100 cars, it's actually pretty nice, 100, are going in that direction. Okay? Does everyone understand that? And it's 100 cars total, 50 coming in roughly, 50 going out.
And that's on page 4.2 of your report. Right?
Thank you.
Right?
Yes.
4.2?
Yeah. All right, so I think we're all clear on that. The numbers we're talking about, okay, they're conservative. All right, so we then reanalyze the intersections, and that's what the table show. And you can see there's a slight impact to Hills Highway. Slight impact, the approach delay increases a little bit, but the queues don't increase, okay? Now I want to preface that by saying that is doing nothing to Halls Highway traffic signal. Timing. We don't need, with this result you have here, and we haven't confirmed all this with DOT yet. We met with DOT once. But we are not proposing to do turn lanes, or revise timing, and increase in cycle lengths. Because we're so low in our volumes, there's capacity here at this intersection to accommodate the 25 cars turning in, the 25 cars turning right in, 25 cars turning out. We're not generating 300-400 cars in the peak hours, my point. So we don't need to add capacity to this intersection to accommodate our traffic. Okay, so what you have here in your combined conditions analysis, the same exact time limits out there. Now, how is that going to work? This is the actual traffic, the DOT traffic signal plan. I know maybe it's hard to see, but this shows Halls Highway right here. This shows Post Road over here. And you see it's a T intersection. Obviously, that's what it is today.
Do we have that?
You don't.
I don't recall seeing
Excellent
that.
question. You don't have this. I can get copies to you, obviously, of this, but I want to show you what we're actually doing. So this is the plan, Halls Highway here. This shows the signal heads up in the air, span wire signal heads, controlling Halls Highway, controlling Post Road. Fair enough. You've all been there. I'm sure you know how it works. And so how it works now is basically Post Road goes green, Halls Highway goes green. All right. There's also pedestrians crossing here as well. They can cross with Halls Highway. All right. What we are doing is, as Michelle showed before, the site plan. This shows Halls Highway here, and here's the site. So you can envision this being opposite Halls Highway. We're going to add a couple of signal heads on the span of wire. One in the corner over here on Halls Highway, a pedestal on a signal head, so you can see better. And then we're going to basically have a green, yellow, red, as Michelle said. So you're going to come out of the site at the same time Halls Highway is leaving. So when you get a green light on Halls Highway, you'll have a green light exiting the site. All right? We don't have a lot of volume. As I said, we have 50 cars coming out of there. 25 maybe going left, 25 going right. Not a lot of volume, so they can operate with Halls Highway. If we're talking about a lot more volume, I would say something differently here. I would say need to do some widening, need to be time signals. We're not talking about a lot of volume here, so we can operate the signal, as is today, by modifying it, adding our signal heads. So I come out of Walgreens, I get a signal, a stop bar, and I get a green light, I'm going. I'm going to either go across the Halls Highway, go left on Post Road, or right on Post Road. Okay? So this results, we're not showing any timing changes for this intersection. I want to make sure that's clear. However, we are going to meet with DOT, talk about this access, their jurisdiction, they control it. We're going to sit down with them as part of the encroachment permit and figure it out. And we're going to submit this traffic study and memorandum to them and talk about that issue. We've already done that once a few months ago. They like what we submitted, but now it goes to the next level, submitting the formal documents. Okay?
Is there any chance that the ingress and egress will not be controlled by a traffic signal?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see any other way, right?
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
if I may.
Commissioner Calabrese, yeah. I can't see you down
I know.
there. You gotta wave that.
That was crazy question for you here, and I know you didn't really want to talk about the Walgreens that's right down the road, but we are talking traffic numbers here. So I'm just curious if you have actual numbers for the current Walgreens, which I understand is roughly 4,000 to 5,000 square feet smaller, but do you have actual traffic numbers of people going there? Bigger. The new one's smaller, regardless. Do you have specific numbers for the traffic going in and out of the current Walgreens there? I would assume...
No, we don't. And the reason why we don't is because it's in the plaza. And we'd have to follow each car and each person going into the Walgreens, because the driveway is for the entire plaza. So in order to do that, we'd have to basically follow each person as they come in the car, where they're walking to, where they're going back to. So is it possible? It is. It's possible. But we didn't deem it necessary, because if we had questionable numbers, if this was a unique use, then we would do that. And we've done that. But in this location, it's a Walgreens, it's a pharmacy. There's been hundreds of them done. The studies have been done. We're all within the same window of generation. So there was really no question about the generation of this particular Walgreens. And plus, it's smaller. So we did not, and I can't tell you that it's generating the same amount as we are here.
But I think, to your point, it would have helped your case a little more had you had those numbers, because then you could basically say, we're just transferring these down the road, and the traffic really isn't going to increase much or decrease much. It's the same
But-
number of cars coming in and out.
Rich from Walgreens does know how many people visit that store per day.
Beautiful.
It's approximately 500 to 600 people, customers a day. I mean, because obviously they can gauge it based upon the register. Joe was looking at cars. So it's approximately 500 to 600 transactions, customers per day. Joe's perspective is he's not allowed to transfer that volume of traffic from that site to this site, because it would give you an unfair representation, in our favor, because...
That's my point.
Because that landlord can simply put a new tenant, and we expect that they will.
Absolutely.
In that space. So we're taking credit for the existing Walgreens traffic at that site, as well as the proposed Walgreens traffic at this site. And then whatever that landlord does in terms of finding a tenant, if it, some other sort of retail use, they'll have to then again prove that their traffic meets their OSHA requirement as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Barron.
Yeah, you gave us the peak hour volumes, since it's open 14 hours, and Mr. Nuff just said that the store in Westport has about 500 to 600 people a day. You've got 100, based on your trip generation, you've got 100. Would you say about 500 trips a day, maybe, for this?
I have to look at it. I don't know off the top of my head, to tell you the truth. I don't know. I have to look at it. I can get that back to you on that.
It's more than 100.
Yes.
You're doing 100 in the
Yes,
peak
more
hours.
than 200. There's 100, yes.
Right.
So yes.
And,
It sounds about right what he's saying in terms of the daily, but I don't have it.
yeah,
for this.
it's kind of good to put it into perspective with
Yeah.
the rest of the traffic, like you did. Like you said, there was 22,000 trips, decreased a day there. So, looking at this as not a significant generator, maybe not, it just, I'm trying to think in the grand scheme of things, if you're generating 500 trips a day, adding to that, like, what percentage of the how much are you increasing the overall post-road traffic there? And, how significant is that?
We can look at that.
Because if it was 1,000, that would seem to be like a 4% increase, which is not insubstantial for one store.
I wasn't a math major, but let's assume that each of those 500 customers comes in their own car per day, and there's 21,000 cars traveling on Post Road in a day?
Yes.
I think it's a fairly small percentage. I mean, if this is listen, our team here, we do a lot of retail projects. Frankly, a 9,000 square foot store, and I don't mean this, people from Southport should not take this the wrong way, but it's really sort of a postage stamp retail presence. This is not a, large strip center, a power center, a regional shopping mall. It is about as small of a retail presence as you can have, frankly, anywhere, including the town of Fairfield.
Yeah, I was just trying to get the perspective. I mean, if it was 2 or 3%, I'm saying, wow, 2 to 3% of the traffic on that street is being generated by this one store, where there's, so many other places people...
You can look at it. You can look at it in terms of peak hour. This is what we focus on, obviously. We're 100 cars in the peak hour, and there's 2,300 in the peak hour. So we're less than 5%.
That's less than 5%.
So it's 5%. So you could say the daily is about that. I just don't have the numbers for it.
Yeah, okay, but it's about 5%, so I'm just trying to get the impact of this percentage-wise. Because your delays, I understand them, and you explained them quite well. I'm just trying to look at overall impact.
Commissioner Kennelly, did you have a question?
Thanks very much. Could you talk a little bit about the decline in service from at Hulse Highway from C to D? The reason I ask is it just a tipping point? Because this is about, I guess it's about just under a 6-second delay for Hulse Highway for the background and combined from 32.7 to 38.4. and then the length of queue appears to only increase by about 3 feet. So because that seems to be the most significant impact area and, may impact, in terms of quality of life and the need for harmony in that area and how it transitions, can you talk a little bit about, what the impacts are, just so I can better understand?
Excellent question, excellent question. I failed to mention it before. Yeah, as a matter of fact, for the level of service criteria, A, B, C, and D, to get to D, you're basically at 35 seconds. So once you cross 35, so this was a low C. In the background, I'll call it a low C. I mean, it's getting close to D. And so, like I said before, we didn't change any timing. We just left it as it is. And what does it tell us? So yes, it was near getting close to a D. It's in the background. You throw a couple more cars there, and you're over the threshold. And as you correctly mentioned as well, if we saw the 120-foot queue go into 150 feet, that would be a problem. That would be an issue. We're adding 3 feet of queue to our calc. So you're exactly correct. It's a threshold that we're crossing.
Or 65 to 68.
Exactly. So we're not seeing a significant change in the backups on Hulls Highway, even though we are going from level service C to level service D with the letter designation. But the actual seconds, there's 6 seconds increase, less than 6 seconds increase.
It's about 5.7. The reason I ask
Thanks.
is because we've had situations where there is a letter change, and the amount of delay is very significant, and the concern then becomes that you can impact pedestrians and things like that, because people do get very upset and stressed out when they're trying to get out of wherever they are to the next thing. But this is, you're saying, a total degradation of about 5 seconds.
Yeah, you could be, like I said, you could be a high C. You have 20 seconds delay and go to a D. That's 15 seconds of delay increase per vehicle. That's not happening here in our analysis.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So I think I wanted to summarize by basically saying in conclusion that both our study and the memorandum we handed out, there's no change in our conclusions. We didn't do any improvements. The signal works. We're adding signal equipment there. We're going to change the signal itself, but the low volume being generated here, we're not impacting the intersection significantly that we have to do any improvements. It works. Obviously, DOT has to sign off on that, and we're going to meet with DOT and go through that. We don't have an accident problem. Sight lines too. We have plenty. Sight lines are terrific along here. We meet the DOT requirements for sight lines at the site drive itself. Michelle talked about the pedestrians and the provision for pedestrians. I'm on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Board of the state of Connecticut, and we're always looking to do what we can do for pedestrians and bicyclists. We're increasing mobility here with this project. We're adding sidewalks, taking care of the bus stop there. So all good things, all good things. And again, it's a lower generator. When you get over 100 trips, 200 trips, you're talking high generation. We're in a 100 trip range. So it's really a lower generator of traffic from a development standpoint. With that, conclude my presentation.
Anybody?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last presenter is Mike Fazio, who's going to give you his property valuation reports. And then I'll do a summary, and then we can get to any other further questions, and then public comment.
As they're passing my report around, I'll introduce myself. My name is Mike Fazio. I'm a principal in Karen and Fazio. We're real estate appraisers here in town. My office is located at 1129 Post Road. I'm a licensed appraiser in the state of Connecticut, and I also hold the MAI designation. I've been appraising real estate for approximately 30 years in Connecticut, and more specifically in Fairfield. In the past, I've been involved in several impact studies in town. Most recently, the girls' softball field up on Hoyden's Lane. We were involved in the Whole Foods property on Grasmere and the expansion of the Pequot Library in Southport. As a preamble to rendering my opinion, I've taken the following steps. I conducted a physical inspection of the property and the surrounding neighborhood. I studied the assessor's maps, zoning maps in the town of Fairfield. I reviewed the field cards at the assessor's office of the subject site and surrounding properties. I studied the site design, architectural plans, and the proposed development, including the site plan, the site selection plans, landscaping, screening plans, the planting plans. The purpose of my analysis is to render an opinion as to what effect the proposed commercial development occupied by Walgreens Pharmacy would have on the neighboring property values. The subject property is located on the south side of the Boston Post Road near the intersection of Kings Highway West in the Southport section of the town of Fairfield. The majority of the Post Road is combined of commercial establishments, as you know. The subject property is 1.065 acres inside and is an unimproved land. The improvements that were on the property have been raised and carted away. The parcel is irregularly shaped. It has 644 feet of frontage along the Boston Post Road. Currently, the property is made up of multiple zones: design commercial, design industrial, and residence B. These are identified as lots 209, 209A, 210, 214 on the Fairfield Tax Assessor's Map 243, and are currently owned by Best Invest, KHW SPT LLC. The development of the Walgreens will be a 9,096 square foot building with an approximate 3,000 square foot basement, a drive-through, restroom facilities, and 46 cars proposed on this parcel. The proposed building's architecture will be compatible with Fairfield, and more specifically, it will fit in with the new building being constructed next door. That's the new Garlic and Herb building. The paved parking lot will provide parking for 46 cars to the east, with screening provided by a fence and large evergreen plantings. Vehicle access to the site would be via curb cut along the Post Road, and the total building coverage would be less than 20% of the lot area. The methodology that I used in conducting my analysis is to make a reasonable judgment as to what effect, if any, the proposed construction of the commercial building will have on surrounding property values. In estimating the impact, if any, on the property values in the neighborhood, a detailed study outlining the subject site characteristics both before and after the proposed project was done. A paired sales analysis was developed as additional support. A description of the neighborhood properties. To the north of the subject property lies the Boston Post Road, also known as Route 1. This is the major east-west commercial artery in Fairfield County, with an average daily count, as was indicated before, of over 20,000 cars a day. The Post Road has a variety of commercial uses, ranging from commercial vehicle repair garages, car washes, and actually now it'll have the new home of the Garrick and Herb restaurant that's being constructed on the property next door. Across the street is a 37,000 square foot Class B office building, and next door to that is the newly constructed Total Look Day Spa. To the east of the property is a single commercial building occupied by Twice is Nice consignment shop. It's a small building, and to the rear of that is a condominium complex called Pequot Landing, and a strip shopping center further to the east. To the south, to the immediate south of the subject, is the entrance to Pequot Landing, condominium complex of about 27 residential condos on a 7-acre site. The residential neighborhood next door to that is made up of a variety of different home styles and Residence A zone along Kings Highway West and Oxford Road. These single-family homes are situated along the street with minimal setback from the street lines. To the west of the subject site, again, is the new facility currently built by Garlic and Herb. It's 4,500 square feet. This site, again, has a similar situation to the subject site, where they went in to be rezoned a portion of it from a Residence B to a commercial designation. It's my understanding that there was little opposition to this application. Further to the west is Fetzer Tire. It's an automotive repair facility. And next door to that is a retail office complex. The residential properties in the immediate neighborhood is, again, the Pequot Landing, a 27-unit condo complex built by Munson Builders. Next door to that is 845 Kings Highway West, a two-story, 2,000 square foot colonial built in the 1800s on a 0.35 acre parcel of land. Across the street, next door to that is 9 Oxford Road. That also is a house built in the 1700s. It's a two-story colonial, 2,500 square feet in size on a 0.35 acre parcel of land. Across the street on Oxford Road, there's a vacant lot that is currently under construction with a 3,000 square foot colonial with the asking price of $1,149,000. Next door to that property is 909 Kings Highway West. This is a two-story Cape-style house, 2,000 square feet. It was also constructed in the 1700s. It's on a 0.31 acre parcel of land. To the west of that property is 209 Kings Highway, a Cape-style house, 1,500 square feet on a 0.27 acre parcel of land. And lastly, next door to that property is 920 Kings Highway, again, another Cape-style house of approximately 1,800 square feet of land. The 902 and 920 are abutting the subject piece of property on the north side of Kings Highway West. It would appear from the physical inspection of neighborhood properties in terms of their relationship and orientation to the subject that no detrimental impact on value could be reasonably anticipated if the proposed Walgreens is approved and constructed. The entire neighborhood is mixed with commercial and residential uses. The properties along Kings Highway West already abut or have direct view of commercial uses along Post Road, so the construction of the proposed commercial building would not adversely impact value or change the current characteristics of the neighborhood. In order to arrive at this conclusion, I used what is called a paired sales analysis, and I'll run through some of the sales and how the pairings worked. I used 4 paired sales analysis. This analysis compares sales, prices of residents located proximate to commercial properties in Fairfield to similar homes away from the same influence. The study indicates no negative impact on property values due to the proximity to commercial development. The construction of commercial structure on the site, which currently is a mix of non-homogeneous zones ranging from industrial to commercial and residential, solidifies this parcel into one homogeneous parcel that's professionally designed. The proposal, along with the new Garrick and Herb site, corrects the poor mix of zoning delineations made many years ago at the corner of Kings Highway and the Post Road. It's my opinion from this analysis that the construction of the Walgreens will add to the neighborhood's desirability rather than detract from it. Therefore, no negative impact from the abutting residents on Kings Highway or Oxford Road is anticipated. I used a paired sales analysis to conclude my I used this paired sales analysis, and in a paired sales analysis, what you do is you take a control, which is a parcel that's sold, that does not have influence of the commercial development, and you compare it to a parcel that has influence of commercial development. The first paired sales that I used was, the control was 71 Southport Ridge. This is a,
You want chart 4? What chart are you on?
I'm on page 22, chart number 1.
Okay.
71 Southport Ridge. This is a colonial-style home built in 2005. It sold in August of 2014 for $650,000. I compared it to 36 Lindbergh Street. This parcel is located one house adjacent to the Post Road. If you're familiar with the Post Road, there is a parcel owned by Bruce's Landscaping. It's been for sale for quite a while. There's a cigar shop next to it. This house abuts that piece of property. If you look at the preceding page in my report, you'll see the pictures of the homes. They're very similar, and the page preceding that, you'll see the site map that shows its location. After making adjustments for the small differences, the percentage change in value due to proximity to commercial is approximately 1%. The second analysis looked at two sales, the first being at 943 Kings Highway West. This house is directly behind the subject property. It's sold. This is the one that has commercial proximity. Directly across the street is the rear of the commercial development at 3671 Post Road. This house was purchased in 2013 for $1,171,000. It's a colonial-style house, about 4,000 square feet, on a .47 acre parcel, and it sold in May of 2013. I compared that to a similar size house of 4,000 square feet at 201 Daybreak Road. This is also in Southport. This house sold for $1,287,000. It was on an acre parcel. It was a newer house built in 1980, and it had a half a bath more. After making adjustments, the percentage change due to proximity to the Post Road commercial was 0.09%. Third set of comparables that I used were 269 Spruce Street and 21 Oxford Place. These two sales, the 269 Spruce Street is directly across the street from the rear of a shopping center. This property sold in 2010 for $360,000. It is a small colonial on .11 acres. It's about 1,520 square feet. I compared that to the house at 21 Oxford Place, which sold for $375,000. It's on a slightly larger parcel of land of .15 acres. It's a little smaller, of 1,394 square feet. After making adjustments that you can see on page 28 of my report, we actually saw that the proximity to commercial was plus almost 8%, so that it was a benefit. The property at 269 Spruce Street had a benefit of its location compared to 21 Oxford Place. And the last set of sales is a set of sales I used in my analysis of the Whole Foods site. This used two sales on the other side of town. The control was at 141 Prince Street with the property with commercial adjacent. This is at the rear of the Miller Auto Dealership located at 59 Warren Street. This property at 59 Warren Avenue sold for $440,000. It was a colonial. It was about 1,700 square feet. I compared that to the control, which was at 141 Prince Street, which is right up the street. That sold for $420,000. It's on a .15 acre parcel of land, very similar. It was a 1,400 square foot house. After making adjustments to the sales, the change in value due to the proximity to the retail development was 0.38%. So these percentages are very nominal, which support that the development of the Walgreens would have no negative impact on the surrounding residential properties, and obviously it would enhance the commercial properties that are along the Post Road. Do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions? No? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Attorney Nur, you're going to head into summary?
I am, Mr. Chairman, primarily to discuss compliance with the standards for the change of zone.
That's great. I think we need to take a 5-minute recess. We'll let you get yourself organized, and
That's fine. We're
we'll
happy
take
to do
a
that.
small bathroom break.
Sure.
Jackie.
My dad had lived, he would have been 99.
Thank
My
you.
dad had died, yeah, but he would have been 99 today. I've been thinking about him all day.
Call the meeting back to order. Attorney Nuff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you just referred to is a memo that I have submitted to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission regarding compliance with the standards of zone change. As I just indicated, I've provided a copy to Attorney Green, and there's some additional copies available on the table at the front of the room.
Thank you.
It's close to 10 o'clock. I know you want, and I want to get,
Well, I mean, just so you know, based on the number of folks that are in the room,
No.
based on a
right.
represented, group, a neighborhood association, I imagine you're probably going to have more than 10 minutes here of summary. I don't think that the public hearing is going to be concluded this evening.
No, and I'm not suggesting that it will or that it should. My point is simply that, assuming we try to adhere to the 11 o'clock curfew for the commission.
We're not
sake-
assuming.
Okay.
We are.
Okay.
I mean, I apologize, but,
No.
I have to go to work in the morning.
No, I understand. So my point is that I'm going to keep my summary brief. If we're keeping the hearing open, you have my memo.
Mhm.
I know that, it's a diligent commission. I would encourage you to read it in its entirety, but I'll summarize it for you now, and then when we come back, you can ask any questions you want to. So, how's that?
That's fine, however you'd like to proceed. I mean, that's fine. Well, you will, of course, have a rebuttal portion.
Of course, yeah.
During which, if there are questions that we have of you, we
Right,
can ask
exactly.
at that time. But you should, present however you believe best to proceed.
I understand, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that advice. So the memos regarding compliance with the standards of zone change, and essentially there are two standards that an applicant must meet for a change of zone. The change of zone must be consistent with the plan of conservation and development. Your most recent version is the year 2000 version, and it also must be the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, of course, is different from the plan of conservation and development. It's found in the regulations, the zone map, and the existing land uses, and both of these factors support the proposed change of zone. It's surprising, as we have a fairly small plan of conservation development, but there are a number of provisions in the plan that all point to and support the change of zone. So I just want to take you through some of those.
Just to be clear, I mean, the POCD of 2000 has been revised and updated since then.
No, I understand in terms of the Commerce Drive section, yes.
Yeah, and there were also revisions to other sections as well.
Okay.
But just so we're clear on that.
I think this is all still relevant, however.
I-
So, Roman 2.3.7, the POCD says development along the Post Road and Southport corridor should be encouraged to reflect architectural features that enhance the visual appeal of the commercial and adjoining residential area and help create a sense of place. Despite this area's unique character, current development along the western edge of the post road lacks visual cues that one is entering into a new town. Well, there's certainly no denying that. And I think with the Gerlich and Herb approval, and with our site added next to it, this problem is remedied. As I noted, this was first identified in the year 2000. I know it preceded that, and I know it was a fundamental issue when the Blue Ribbon Task Force was doing its job with Alan Plattis. So I think that we've done a good job in terms of creating a building and a site that creates that attractive gateway. At the same time, keeping the building at a very low profile so that it doesn't impact the neighbors to the south. The next provision, perhaps the most applicable. Rezoning of the design industrial district land along the post road to design commercial is recommended. I mean, I think that's for obvious reasons. The uses that are permitted in a design commercial zone are more consistent with what you'd find on the post road corridor. The problem is, if you only rezone those portions of our properties that are zoned industrial, you render those sections almost unbuildable, nearly undevelopable. The way this project makes sense, the way any project for these parcels makes sense, is to create a unified whole of those entire 4 parcels. So for instance, if you were to rezone simply the current industrial zone property, you have a 25-foot setback in a design commercial zone. You have a 10-foot landscape requirement along any parking area. Where you abut a residential zone, you must adopt the setback of that area. In this case, Residence B is 20 feet. Once you add parking lot space, drive aisles, parking ratios, you end up with a site that's nearly undevelopable. So when the Plan of Conservation Development says you should change these parcels, this area, from design industrial to design commercial, it naturally assumes, as it must, that you're also rezoning the other portions of the property that are also part of that. Because it also renders, even if you're to rezone this, you're left with at least one undevelopable residential parcel.
Well, just on that point, you keep referring to these 4 parcels as one lot, when in fact they are separate parcels.
Yes, they are separate parcels.
And could be developed independently if they were rezoned to commercial.
If you were to not combine them, their small size would, I mean, I'm trying to think of something other than a photo map that would fit on those. Once you overlay all those requirements...
Photo map.
Wow.
I know, I'm showing my age, I know.
Oh my goodness. That's
good.
Well, I'm looking at the commission, and I think you can all...
1976, man.
And I think you can all relate.
That's good stuff.
I know. I haven't entered the digital photography world yet.
Commissioner Barrett.
Let me know when you find one.
Mr. Nuff, there are 4 separate parcels now. The portion that's Residence B, you said, no, the portion that's Residence B, you said before was 0.4 acres, which is about 17,000 square feet.
Yep.
Residence B zone has a minimum lot requirement of 6,000. I suppose, I mean, we need somebody to get up and actually do a plan. You could probably find some way to revise the lot lines to put 2 dwellings there, I would think.
Here's the point. I'm not saying that all development, absent a complete rezoning, is impossible. I mean, I can't say that. Developers are smart and clever people. They'll find a way to shoehorn something. But our fundamental point is, how can this be developed in a way that's consistent with the Plan of Conservation Development, that creates the gateway that has been talked about for years, and at the same time protects the neighbors? Because I think we've come up with a plan that does both. It creates the gateway and it protects the neighbors. If you want to put a small, tiny commercial development on 214, another one on 209A, another one on 209, and one residence in the back, could you do that? I suppose. I don't know if anyone would actually tenant those buildings. Could you build it in a way that complies with the zoning regulations? I suppose you could. Would that be the gateway that you want to create into the town? I mean, I'm thinking like the smoke cigar shop on Post Road now. It'd probably be half that size. If that's the gateway that you want into the town of Fairfield, I suppose you could do that. I just don't think that really benefits anyone. And when we get to talk about the comprehensive plan, really what that boils down to is it good for the town of Fairfield? Because once you peel away all the legalese, what the case law says is that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan if it's something that's good for the town as a whole. And I would say that what we're proposing is far better for the town as a whole to treat this as one unified, comprehensive lot, so we can create that gateway, so we can create the landscaping, so we can do all the work for the pedestrians and the bicycles, none of which would be possible if you're going to parcel this or divvy this up into tiny little parcels with, you know, two-bit developers trying to put up whatever crappy little building they could put. That's really what this comes down to. Could we develop these? Sure. Would it ever have a tenant? Probably not. Would it create a gateway or an attractive enter into Fairfield? Absolutely not.
Okay, is that red parcel next year, that's the proposed Garlic and Herb site?
It's to our west, yes.
To your west. I just noticed on that site that actually is a commercial site being developed on the Post Road, but that does not border Kings Highway West. What I see is the difference between that does not border the street, there's residential properties.
No.
It's not appropriate.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate. Thank you.
So I see that.
I understand, Mr. Barris, but you know, what we'll do, no, I'm going to skip ahead.
Consistency with the plan, but,
Well, you know, there's the plan of conservation and development, and there's the comprehensive plan, which is found in your zoning map and your zoning regs. You have the Dowwood parcel, which does extend all the way from Post Road down to Kings Highway West. I'm going to jump ahead of myself. If you turn to tab 5 in your handout, which is a colored portion of your zone map, and if you look at the other side of Kings Highway West, so if you follow Kings Highway West across...
Hold on, you got to just orient us here.
All right, so if you follow Kings Highway West across Post Road...
We got to find that on the zone map.
I'm like,
I mean, we get it. Well, where are you? All the way on the left.
There are...
The big brown parcel.
There are two gray freckles
Yeah.
surrounded by a sea of red.
All right, I see it.
I see the sea.
All right.
The one gray freckle, that's Spencer.
Yeah, you're going to have to go back
The
now.
other two, to the east, that's our site.
So along just to orient everyone to the map, along the left edge, there is a gray sliver of industrial zone. To the right of that, where the letters DI are, but it's not, it's a red slice, that's the Fetzer tire.
No, that's
No.
Dowwood, which is right here.
Dowd, got it. To the right of that is a gray sliver, which is...
That's Fetzer.
Right? And
Yep.
is represented on your other map there.
Yes.
Okay, and then continuing to move to the right, we get into the subject parcel.
After Fetzer is Garlic and Herb, which is also the subject of a zone change, and then we get to ours. And I think there's two important things to pull from this zone map. And by the way, just to backtrack, tab 4, you don't need to turn to it. That's the 1930 map. And what they did was just sort of indiscriminately draw a line X feet from Post Road and said, okay, everything there is commercial, everything else is residential, and you end up with all these split lots. And if you compare the 1930 zone map to the 2014 zone map, you'll see that over time, and the standard for zone changes through the course of time and the wisdom of the commission, you see fit to make certain changes. Well, the commission, since 1930 until 2014, has seen fit to make many changes to the zone map for many reasons, many times to correct the sort of indiscriminate and arbitrary drawing of a line parallel to Post Road. And the best illustration of that is if you continue following Kings Highway West and actually crosses Post Road and sort of forms an X, you'll see that every parcel in that stretch is zone design commercial. Because where you have a road that parallels Post Road or any arterial road, it wants to be filled in with the same singular zone. You've done that on the other side of Kings Highway West. You've begun it with the Dowit parcel. You've done it with the parcel to the west, where the zone continues from Post Road to the adjoining street that runs parallel to it. All we're asking is that you continue that trend, as you've continued with Garlic and Herb, to incorporate this site. We have, now it may seem silly, but on the Twice as Nice parcel, it goes from Post Road to Kings Highway. On 209, it goes from Post Road to Kings Highway. On Dowit, it does the same thing. It does it on the opposite side of Kings Highway. The map is a picture's worth 1,000 words. The fact that you can see these two gray freckles that stand out in that sea of red is an indication in and of itself that this is sort of a patchwork quilt of zoning parcels, that there's no coherent thought behind creating zones that look like this.
I mean, to be fair, across Kings Highway West, moving further along, you have commercial, design commercial intermixed with residential on the other side of the street as well.
Well, you have a very hard line along the northern edge of that design commercial zone where there's none of these sort of freckles of other zones. It is a uniform district.
Okay, I mean, I understand your argument, and I think it's well stated, but directly across the X that you're pointing out, next to the condo-style office buildings on the northern side, it shifts from commercial to residential on Kings Highway West, and then it shifts back again to what's the brown is a residence B, I think.
I think it's planned residential.
Okay, and then shifts back to commercial, and then there's another industrial swath, in the middle there.
But even judging just the size of the parcels...
Patchwork, I think, is a good word, but...
Agreed,
not
but look at the size of the patches.
Mm-hmm.
We're dealing with this postage stamps of zoning on 4 different parcels in a way that they will never be developed in a manner that the town can be proud of.
Commissioner Jacobson. Yep.
I just I went to visit the site, and the lady I went with said that there used to be 2 houses on the part that's Zone B. I mean, it's not inconceivable they could put houses back there.
I'm not saying that a house could not be located on parcel 210. What I'm saying is the practical effect of adding a house to parcel 210, maintaining that residential zoning designation, has a ripple effect on the parcel to the north, currently zoned design industrial and presumably supposed to be design commercial under the plan of conservation development, because you have to apply the residential setback to that zone. So if you, and so my point was, and I was maybe sort of delving too deeply into the arcane bits of Fairfield zoning bulk requirements, but this is how property gets developed. Developers and engineers look at a site, they look at the setbacks, they look at the parking ratios, and they say, what can we do with this property? And I'm telling you, if you only rezone the design commercial and you don't include the residential, you're going to be left with lots, or a lot, if we combine them, that is undevelopable. It will continue to remain in its current state. That's the choice you're faced with.
Because it doesn't make sense business-wise.
Right.
The lot's too small to put a 1,500 square foot building.
No one
So what
builds,
you're gonna be stuck with.
no one builds a building out of charity.
Right, I understand.
Yeah, I understand.
I understand.
So
It's not viable.
it's not viable. And that's a valid land use concern. And you see it in wetlands regulations. They ask, is there a feasible and prudent alternative? If there was an environmental intervener, they would say, is there a feasible or prudent alternative? Feasible is can it be done? Prudent, will anyone do it? I'm telling you, not rezoning all these parcels, including the residential portions, is simply not prudent, because you will continue to have the lot as it exists today. There's numerous other provisions in the plan and conservation development with which this plan is consistent, including improving the basic character of existing neighborhoods and commercial centers, building elements that reflect the town's colonial heritage, which I think we've done very well. There's a number of provisions regarding providing sidewalks and access and better pedestrian travel, which we've done. That was one of the first things that Jim Wen had asked us to do when we first went to meet with him on this plan. It's our understanding, and I think it's a reasonable one, that a combination of Gerlich and Walgreens would be a nice pedestrian destination. I think Gerlich will be a nice pedestrian destination, but you won't have any crosswalks across Halls Highway. That's on us. Another provision in the Plan of Conservation Development is to support the Economic Development Commission in its efforts to encourage proper range of economic activities. So the Planning and Zoning Commission has understood that there is a need, there's always a need to grow the grand list. And that's the other thing. Not only will you not have the gateway look if you don't rezone the residential portions, your grand list, the addition to the grand list under that scenario would be negligible, probably barely what it is today. If you want to grow the grand list in a reasonable, comprehensive fashion, you can do that and still protect the neighbors by rezoning all those sites. And the last one is 3.10.5, which is to designate sites with proper access for appropriate economic use that will not be detrimental to established residential areas. As I indicate here, great care has been taken with the site design to eliminate any negative impacts on neighbors. At the neighbor's request, we eliminated the curb cut. At the neighbor's request, we made a more robust and dense evergreen landscaping plan along Kings Highway West. We've kept the building lower than what could otherwise be built in any zone, including a residence zone. And the signage is less than permitted. Now, if you want to go to the comprehensive plan, as I said, that's based upon the intention of promoting the best interests of the entire community, and the goal is to prevent spot zoning. I would contend that if we have spot zoning, that's what we have now, those gray spots. And when we talked about, the evolution of the zone map from 1930 to today, but, I want to call your attention to the chart that I provided on, I think it's the second last page. And what it does is it compares relevant zoning criteria, bulk requirements, of the various zones to what were proposed. So, for instance, if you start talking about, well, what could be built there? Can you do a house? Can you do something on design commercial? So the maximum height in the design commercial zone is 40 feet, industrial is 40 feet. In a residence B, the maximum height is 32. Our proposed height is 26, less than what you could build on residential lots. And in that regard, we have a 9,000 square foot building. I dare say I could find relatively quickly a lot of homes in Southport that are probably larger than 9,000 square feet. Just to give you a sense of proportion, that this is not a tremendously large building in Southport. The setback, front yard setback, in a DC zone is 25 feet, in a B residence zone is 20 feet. We're proposing 20 feet, and that's the Kings Highway West. Minimum access. Right now, we have no access onto Kings Highway West whatsoever. If we were to develop these in any other way, we could have two curb cuts because we have two parcels that front on Kings Highway West. We've eliminated all traffic. Now listen, if you had a house, would it be a lot? No. But there is no traffic that's associated with our project on Kings Highway West at all. There would be under a different scenario. And in terms of minimum landscaping, none required in the residential zone. The DC requires 10 feet adjacent. We're providing that dense evergreen landscape buffer and the 6-foot fence. So as I've indicated, for many years, various town bodies, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Blue Ribbon Commission, for years has talked about redeveloping these sites in order to create an attractive entrance into the town. As I've said, maybe ad nauseum by this point, only by combining all these parcels in a consistently zoned, comprehensive lots can you achieve economic development, a gateway into the town, and also protect the neighbors. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but you're probably tired of me by this point.
We kind of peppered you along the way, but Commissioner Corcoran.
I wanted to ask about one of the goals of planning here, which is to encourage the development of better and safer pedestrian and bicycle access.
Yep.
I know that you have eliminated the access for cars on Kings Highway West, but you've also eliminated the access by pedestrians. So in a way, this goal is not really completely met.
Well, we felt that the need to provide a completely unadulterated, unbroken buffer for the neighbors based upon, frankly, their very candid discussion with me, that's superseded. If there's a desire to create a gate, a path for those people on Kings Highway or adjoining Kings Highway West to go to the store, I'm sure we can accommodate that.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I do, real quick.
Sure. Yeah. Commissioner Cannell.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nuff, just from sort of, you were talking about how it's kind of a hodgepodge that would be unified and all, but I wondered if there was some, sort of method in what you kind of view as kind of madness of how these parcels are laid out, and what it would be to me is that it would seem that the residents be almost in a sense kind of shields, in a sense, what's there at Kings Highway West, which is more residential, and that the areas of kind of to the north of it, which is closer to the post road, is where you'd imagine the commercial development to happen. So probably right. I'm just saying. You see what I'm saying? In other words, I know the Dowd property, the old Friendlies, which is that restaurant thing now, did go all the way to the edge and everything like that. But my point is that one of the things that you guys have worked out with or agreed to do is to not have curb cuts into Kings Highway West. But it seems as though the zoning here, in a sense, maybe was meant to, I don't know whether it works in practical terms, but it's the idea that, that the residences would be, on the other side, on your side of Kings Highway West, are meant to kind of unify that neighborhood behind. And then when you're fronting the post road, that's where the property would be.
Well, two responses.
Sure.
One, you may be giving the folks who did the zone map in 1930 too much credit.
Absolutely.
Because as said, if you want to look at tab 4, they took a ruler and drew a line. The other thing is that if you're going to have a meaningful commercial, and by the way, Dawood parcel is far deeper. It's probably at least twice as deep from Post Road to Kings Highway as us. Part of the problem is ours is so shallow between Kings Highway and Post Road. That's the fundamental problem. And so let's say you could find a suitable commercial user for this parcel up on Post Road. Now we've been able to create a very significant buffer, and we have Kings Highway West, which on its own creates a measure of distance.
Right.
Would someone want to live? I don't know. My client also owns this other site. I know Mr. Rywald backs up to that. My guess is that
it's not an attractive.
It's not. No. It's. I mean, you look at the map. It just strikes me as anachronistic. It's a map. This area is just, time has forgotten it until you bring some coherence to it.
Can I ask Mr. Chairman one more question?
Of course.
Thanks very much. You talked about this concept of the gateway, and the idea of, I suppose, a gateway is meant to differentiate one community from the next. And one of my concerns from a planning perspective is the fact that I don't see a tremendous amount of differentiation between the Westport side of the border and the Fairfield side of the border. In fact, while you're right, the cigar shops and stuff like that are not particularly, there aren't, knockout-looking properties or something like that. what's clear is that this would be more of a, in my mind, of a continuation of the current look you have in Westport, which are larger, big parking lot with a building on it, commercial clients, things like that. In other words, I don't know that
What
there's a
types in
distinction.
Westport are you thinking of?
Well, I'm just saying that the further you go west on the post road, you get to what I would think of, and I think you would agree, would be these kinds of larger shopping plazas and things like that. You've got the Honda dealership, you've got all that kind of stuff that kind of follows along there.
I see a lot of mediocre strip centers on
absolutely.
Post Road.
Right.
You have Belducci's, which I don't know where that comes from, and sort of the Frenchy Park Monceau store, or whatever that is. It looks like it's out of the Southwest. It has no sense of place whatsoever. I mean, I think what we're trying to do is something different here. If you drive down Post Road in Westport, you could be anywhere.
Right.
And frankly, the same is the case for this section of Post Road in Southport now. You have a diner. You know, maybe Total Look is going to do something nice. I haven't seen their plans. What else do you have?
Well,
a bunch of nondescript,
well, let me just say this.
out of character buildings.
I don't want to. I want to make sure you understand. I'm not trying to argue the point. I'm just trying to get from a philosophical point of view about what's going on. Is that for me a sense of place comes from establishments that are native to the community. You know what I'm saying? That there's and perhaps that smaller, maybe some sort of smaller clientele could fit into something like that. But when you talk about not having a sense of place, it does strike me that a Walgreens, even if it is somewhat modified with a cupola or something, is still fairly generic. Is my point. I'm not saying it's not an appropriate use for the site. I'm saying that if I was trying to distinguish Fairfield from Westport, that Walgreens, looking at it, doesn't particularly, scream gateway of Fairfield. It's just one more Walgreens.
But I think you're looking at the wrong criteria.
Okay, I'm asking you to kind of.
I mean, you're looking at the user.
Right.
I mean, if we had a 9,000 square foot building that looked identical to this,
right,
and it was, Jim Kennelly's cigar and knitting shop, I mean, would that make you feel better? I mean, that's,
No, it's less about just, and I don't, again, I'm trying to get my head around the idea of this. It's just more the idea of the structure, the kind of on a parking lot kind of thing. It's more, I could see it anywhere. But you're saying in terms of when you define gateway, what you're saying, I just want to understand it. Is that for you, gateway is essentially a commercial property that is kind of appropriate, that's attractive, whatever. It's not so much that it's signifying Fairfield as it just is delineating that here's a commercial area in Fairfield. Is that a fair point?
I mean, the other area in which I've heard the gateway discussion is Sasco Road.
Right.
And it's a lovely development.
Right.
It's beautiful. It's also probably 40 feet high.
Right.
On a much larger parcel. And who do they have? They have a national bank. Now, they may have some, offices above. I suppose we could have offices above too, or residential above. But now we're up at 40 feet, and the neighbors will be saying, why are you putting a 40-feet building up in the air? Okay. I mean, what we're trying to do is strike a balance between a user who is willing to come to this site, right, who is willing to do a very attractive building, who's going to be paying a lot of taxes to the town of Fairfield, and who's real. We know that Walgreens wants to be at the site. Mm-hmm. Anything else, we just don't know. It's how long has the property sat here with no development for all these years? And there's a reason for that.
Thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move to the public comment portion of our public hearing. And Attorney Green has... Is
it attorneys or in favor first?
Risen.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
I don't know typically those in favor, or is it attorneys?
I don't know that there is a protocol. We certainly haven't distinguished between those in favor and those who are opposed. We have generally taken... We've generally taken an accommodation. for those who have come and given the scheduling issues and such. We're at a little after 10:20. I imagine that Attorney Green, you likely have more than half an hour.
I do, Mr. Chairman.
There are lots of folks who have been waiting here all night, although it's certainly been a very substantive 4 hours that we've sat here. I would propose that we throw it open to some public comment and allow some of the members of the public to speak, and then when we reconvene, you'll have an opportunity if that
Sure,
works
that's
for you.
fine, Mr. Chairman.
Does
I
that work for
understand.
you?
Certainly.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, with that having been said, are there any members of the public that would like to be heard? Just come up to the podium, state your name, address for the record, and
For the record, Mr. Chairman, my name is Arthur Hirsch. I reside at 1 Oak Bluff Road. I'd just like to make a couple of statements to you and the commission. This developer here is taking a blighted piece of property that's not being taxed the way it should be, and they're going to pour about $2-3 million into it and make it some real taxable income to the town, which we're in all dire need of, and I don't see why this shouldn't be accepted. The design that they've placed on this Walgreens is not the run-of-the-mill. I think it corresponds with the neighborhood. I'd also like to state for the record also that everyone in this room this evening calls this the gateway of Southport. I happen to be building on a piece of property on Spruce Street and Rennell Drive presently. And when I was going through the historical district, they called this the gateway. Every section that's being developed in this Southport area is the gateway to the community. Now, which is the gateway? I'd like to ask this group of people here this evening. And another thing that I'd like to state for the record, my friend, Attorney Green, he represented a group of people in my neighborhood in the Stratfield area against the Walgreen development over on Stratfield Road. We have a blighted piece of property for the past 6-7 years. They cannot develop it. They can't get a person to come in there and sublet the property, because now there's another problem. For some reason, no one knew this. Now the building that presently sits there is loaded with asbestos, and the owner of the property wants no part of it. But I don't want to go into this now.
how does that relate to this?
I don't want to go there because it's irrelevant to this case. But I just want to state again that I'm for this, and I think this blighted piece of rock over on the post road there would be beautifully developed with this complex. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is D.J. Smith, and I'm a resident of the town. I happen to be a commercial real estate broker, too, and I really think that this should be approved. The thing sitting there, you know, if you were to split it up the way it is split up, and I'm sorry we couldn't see, I'm sorry that people can't see how this lot is kind of
We're trying to work
chopped
on
up. But you can't develop this thing piece by piece like that. Now you look like, you know, driving into town, it would just look terrible. So they take this property, assemble it together, put a nice structure on it. It's fantastic. The grand list grows, and there's no services. Nobody needs police, and, you know, it would just be a terrific way to develop. I'm 100% for it, and I would wish you guys would approve it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gaylord Meyer, and I'm an RTM member as well as District 1. I feel like I've been here every week. I am concerned, and I would like to be consistent, We stood before you on 172 Spruce Street
Mhm.
for a zone change, and also on the 256 Spruce Street. My concern here is about the zoning and the changing. I think that there has to be some consistency here. There's an invasion of developers. Some are appropriate, and I think some are not. But there is an encroachment that is going on all throughout Southport and Fairfield with developers moving in on residential property and changing the zoning. I ask you to be consistent, because what's happened here on the old Kings Highway, it was residential. It's now commercial. On Spruce Street, which is not, and you say, what's the difference? It's the same thing. It's the changing the zoning, taking residential property, and then the next thing you know, the streetscape is all commercial. I'm asking you not to give them the change in zoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Burke. I live at 245 Umpqua Road. I grew up in Fairfield. I grew up on Bronson Road. I know the intersection. I used to go to Stop and Shop from Bronson Road. This is going to be a one-story commercial building on US Route 1. It's going to add to our tax rolls. It's not going to require more schools. It's not going to require more tax expenditures. And it's going to be screened from the residential areas by a street, by a wall, and by 3 types of trees. A lot of care and thought and money has gone into planning it, the materials, the design, and even the dappling of the parking lot. So I'm in favor of this application.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sabina Canhai, and I've been a tenant of the Pink House since 2002. When I turned 24 years old, I opened up a wellness center in that building. My concern is safety and small business. I'm not sure if anyone is aware of how many larcenies have happened at that Walgreens, and there's a lot of larceny that's happened there, and I just don't feel safe having that kind of high traffic next to my business. I'm really happy that Garlic and Herb is moving in, and yes, it is a mixture of commercial and residential, but it's small business. That's the reason why I chose that community. So it's frustrating and sad too. Yes, we want to see it developed, but I think there could be some other choices.
Thank you.
Good evening. Brenda Kupchik, for the record, lifelong resident of Fairfield and state representative. You know, I'm hearing some people talk about tax rolls, and I'm not sure that's a zoning sort of decision that you would make, that you would decide because we would gain some benefit from taxes. What concerns me, and it's not so much this particular area, but what concerns me is what Gaylord Meyer was also saying, is that nobody really can be sure how their neighborhood might change if a piece of land isn't developable all of a sudden. So, for example, the land could be developed into a couple of houses, but maybe that's just not profitable. So if you live, say, near, you know, a few houses away from a commercial area, all of a sudden, 10 or 15 years down the line, somebody might want to knock down those houses and make your next door now a commercial area. The only thing that concerns me is that this neighborhood on that section was residential, and now we're asking to change that. And I think that's kind of unfair to the people who live in that area. So I would just ask that you think long and hard about that when you make a decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Michael Hurley, RTM, District 1. First off, thank you to the Commission. I know how hard you've worked, particularly over the past several months. So, as another town elected official, thank you. When I think about this parcel of land, and I've spoken before the Commission about garlic and herbs, and no one wants to see the property redeveloped in an area in a manner that's consistent with the area more than I think anyone. All of the neighbors that are here tonight. For me, it's a question of the zone change. And I think that the commission really needs to think hard about all the people who live in that immediate area and are opposed to the zone change. The safety issues are significant. I live on the other side of Post Road, up Hulls Highway, and Hulls Highway right now is very challenging. And I see that the traffic study said that it was a C. As a result of this, it would go to a D, which I think is problematic. I'm not sure if that takes into account the Garlic and Herbs development or not. I suspect it probably doesn't. So from my standpoint, I really hope the commission heeds the concerns of the local neighborhood and does not approve the zone change.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard?
My name is Malcolm Rowe. I live on Arbor Drive in close proximity to this proposed development. I am against it very strongly. I don't think a commercial development in this particular location is what we want in Southport, and I'm sure most people are against it. In particular, I think that there's going to be a lot of traffic congestion on Hulls Highway where it feeds onto Post Road. On the plan, I saw that there are 2 lanes exiting the site, one of which will go north onto Hulls Highway. That's going to conflict with traffic going south on Hulls Highway and turning east. So probably signalization will have to have a right turn lane there, which will cause a backup up Hulls Highway. Hulls Highway at that intersection also has some feeder traffic from a condominium development and also an office building that come into there. And in rush hour, there's going to be a major backup there. Also, as far as safety is concerned, I cross over the road in this area every day when I get the Metro North train, and it's very difficult to cross there. Even at the crossing, it's dangerous. The traffic goes very fast there. And with this development, if it goes ahead, you'll find more people using that pedestrian crossing in the area to go to Walgreens, and it's just waiting for an accident. And in the last 3 years, 2 people have gotten killed in Westport just over the border because of traffic going too fast. This is an accident waiting to happen. Also, I don't know if people have experienced living in a commercial area, but the people in the condominium project called Pequot Landing, they're going to be affected by a lot of noise if this project goes ahead because of dumpsters being emptied early in the morning at 4:30 to 5 a.m. You'll get trucks with the backup alarms, the crashing of dumpster lids and revving of trucks. They don't tell you that, but that's the reality. If this development goes ahead, it'll be very, very noisy in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sharon Ferrante. I'm a resident, and I'm not really good at speaking, so please bear with me. I don't usually do this, but I was very concerned. I would hope you consider what really is best for Fairfield, and I think that the zoning needs to be changed, and I think it needs to be changed for one of the other gentlemen who said, like in Stratford, what happened to the property there. I think that we need to change. If you have ever read the book, Who Moved the Cheese? Well, our cheese has been moved. So we need to go with it. We need this there. It will improve Fairfield. It will be a good thing for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Roger Van Voorhees. I'm a resident of Fairfield for some 20 years. I live in Fairfield Center, within walking distance of retail amenities. I'm also a real estate agent. And one of the factors that's become more and more relevant to folks like us is the walkability factor. If you flip the coin on access to this property, or this use rather, at this location, and you view it as one might a convenience store where one could walk to in from a residential standpoint to get a quart of milk or something that Walgreens actually offers as a full-service shop, or to pick up your prescription rather than hopping in the car, then perhaps as a neighbor you might view this as an asset. So I do encourage what is essentially a very low impact by comparison to restaurants, other types of commercial uses which would be readily approvable on a smaller scale, including dumpsters and all the other bric-a-brac, bottles crashing from such restaurant uses. This is manna from heaven to a degree. I highly encourage you to do the right thing and improve this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public wish to be heard?
Good evening. My name is Dave Rosenstein.
Good evening.
Let me just thank you for all your time here. I realize you're putting in a lot of time and consideration into this project. I live on Acorn Lane in Southport. I've been a resident of the Southport section of Fairfield for 18 years. And I've thought long and hard about this and this proposal, and I have to say that I'm against the proposals based upon the rezoning. And I thought about all of us here, why we moved to this town, the sense of community that Fairfield and Southport offers. And when we moved here, we made probably for most of us the biggest investment in our lives in purchasing or renting in this community. And that is predicated on a sense of neighborhood that we get when we move into an area. And when we move into an area, there are certain assumptions that come with it when you make that significant purchase. And one of them is that the rules of the game don't change 1, 3, or 5 years later. If that were the case, I don't think many of us would purchase if we knew that the next day or a year from now or 3 years from now, what was a residential neighborhood could be affected by having a commercial for-profit development built right across the street. And I think we have to think long and hard, because today it's a lot of people in this room, but tomorrow it could be me, or you, where someone wants to change the rules of the game. I don't think it's fair. We need to have a sense of fairness, equity, and balance in this community. Treat people who've made that investment with respect. And I think to do otherwise does them all a disservice. Does a disservice for the community. We have to stop putting the almighty commercial dollar ahead of people, neighbors, friends who are in this community and who have come here for a reason. And so I would strongly urge all of you to consider what it means for these people who live right across the street. But I see it as a larger issue. There are proposed developments around the corner from me that I think are in the early stages, and I think that this is a precedent-setting hearing that's going to have ramifications going forward. Talk about character and community and town and a sense of belonging. We don't get that by putting a commercial facility right on top of somebody's doorstep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Don Worth. I've been a town resident all my life. I was provoked by this gentleman prior to me to get up and say something, although I have been sitting here biting my tongue the whole time. 3 topics I want to point out. I find it kind of cheesy, for lack of a better word, to have the gateway of Fairfield be represented with a corporate Walgreens. Or even the fact that you would try to get me to ingest that and buy onto it is kind of insulting. Also, the traffic situation with Halls Highway, anybody that's lived in that neighborhood, to get out of, I go to Walgreens in Westport because I take Halls Highway intersection because I can go right on red. To be able to come out of that intersection, take a left to go towards Fairfield Center is impossible now. To try to cross that intersection with an opening to go into that property, it defies logic. Especially we're gonna have traffic backing up from Center Street to the light at Halls Highway coming from Westport. Third and final thing is, the gentleman who gave property values and tried to get us to take two different homes and compare them and say that in this time, this is worth this much money, but after Walgreens is here, that it's gonna be beneficial to the people that have made their big investment here, that's another insult. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other members of the public wish to be heard?
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry about my accent. I hope you will understand me. I live off Halls Highway, and I want to speak as a mother. We have a lot of kids in our neighborhood. Approximately on this tiny street, we have 50 kids. Many of them go to Mill Hill School. Many of them every day cross Halls Highway. For me, it's heartbreaking to know that my child is going to cross this Halls Highway right now. And they do it all the time. They ride their bike, they walk. They like to go to Mill Hill playground to play. Every time they have to cross this Halls Highway. And for me, it's very, very difficult to hear that we are going to increase this traffic if you are going to approve this project. You are going to increase traffic by 5% building Walgreens. You are going to build garlic and herbs. Restaurant is going to increase another traffic by another 5 or maybe even 2%. It's already an increase of 7% of traffic in this area. And you know what? We bought our house 15 years ago. After we bought our house, we were told that a little girl that was sitting in front of that house was killed by a truck that backed off Halls Highway into our tiny street. He did not see that little four-year-old girl. And I think every time about this girl, every time my kids go outside to play. So as a mother of this neighborhood, I'm asking you, please do not approve this project.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to be heard, apart from those represented by Attorney Green? No? All right. Well, we're at 10:45. We're just about at our curfew. So, so I will, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. I will adjourn the public hearing, for the, continue, adjourn. Well, adjourn is a continuance, same thing. Yeah. So, okay, continue the public hearing until, our next, regular meeting, which is when? What's the date? 2 weeks? They don't want to do the math. It's 2 weeks from tonight. The 23rd. So this hearing will be continued until the 23rd. And we're going to...
Make a motion to go into executive session.
Motion back to executive session by Attorney Alessi, seconded by Commissioner Kennelly.
No. Good job. That's the hammer on him, boy.
He did. All right. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda under compliances is 102 Kings Highway, application of John DiTullio to amend the sign plan and design commercial district.
All right, I've got, pass these down. I'm sorry I didn't include this in your packet, but I have several aerial photos here. This piece of property is towards the triangle where Tungus Hill Road comes down to Kings Highway. As you're looking at this, the parcel to the left-hand side of the picture is the Meineke Muffler Shop. The next piece over is what we're talking about. It's got a little X on it. It's an old house that fronts the Kings Highway portion of the property. It's been an office for a while. This sign is proposed on the rear of the building, and there's a parking lot between the rear of the building and Tunxus Hill, so it's actually facing the Tunxus Hill side of the building. So that is what's, just to kind of orient you, what you're looking at in that photo of the perspective is the rear of the building.
Excuse me.
It's a set of channel letters that complies. There's a sign on the front. It was approved earlier in the year. It's a box sign on the front. This is actually probably a better looking sign than the sign on the front of the building.
It complies?
It does.
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly. Second by Commissioner Jacobson.
It complies, and its visual impact will be lessened by the fact that it's, as was described, and you can see from the photograph, that it is fairly well away from the immediate roadway, because it's in the back, and there's the parking lot in between.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennelly.
Could I see that?
What does the sign look like?
Right here.
In the packet. In the packet.
Oh, the state farm thing?
Yeah.
Which one is sitting?
What'd she say?
It's ugly.
Very ugly. It's their logo. It's what? It's large? Who from the alternates are on?
Jackie would be taking Jones.
Jackie for Joan, okay. So,
It meets our regs.
it meets our regulations. I'm sorry you don't like the logo.
It's not the logo, it's that it's red, it's lighted, it's large. Oh, well.
You need to use the microphone.
She's not sitting.
Oh, Commissioner Francis, I'm sorry, you're not on. I apologize.
Who is on? Jackie?
Jackie is on for...
If I'm on, I'd approve it. It faces a parking lot. It's ugly, but parking lot's ugly. Let them do what they want.
Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? It's, the item carries unanimously. Next item is 1910 Black Rock Turnpike, application of Robert Santangeli to reduce the size of an existing restaurant and change the use to retail and dry cleaning in a design commercial district.
Yeah, you may be familiar, this is Cinzano's restaurant at Black Rock that takes up 3 out of the 4 storefronts, the 4th being occupied by Dunkin' Donuts. Before, the restaurant has kind of grown. What they're looking to do is scale back. They've got a catering kind of facility there that takes up 2 of the storefronts. They're looking to downsize the restaurant. So it'll remain as one, the left-hand most storefront will remain as Cinzano's, but the 2 centerpieces, which are kind of their overflow and catering facilities, they're looking to convert back to retail, which it was prior to it being a restaurant. They've got a drop-off dry cleaner that wants to go in the space next to Dunkin' Donuts. They're not going to be doing any dry cleaning on premise. It's just a counter, basically a counter. You drop your clothes off, you pick them up, they take them someplace else to be washed. And then they are still talking with other potential tenants as a retail space in between. But from a parking standpoint, it reduces the burden of the number of parking spaces they would need, so it's less of a draw on parking. It's just a change of use from restaurant to retail. There's very little change to the storefront other than, they're eliminating 2 doors and putting a wall in between the 2 tenancies. This was at one point 4 different retail spaces. Cinzano's has kind of expanded. Now they're looking to contract a little bit and convert back to retail.
Is this the sign plan?
No, that's just the architect's logo.
Okay. The 1920 Black Rock Turnpike, I thought it was a sign, because it's 1910 on our agenda.
No, I think that's just... Yeah, no, that's just the title block that the architect is using.
Is there any exterior, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So, thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly, seconded by Commissioner Alessi. Questions for staff, comments?
Is there any exterior alteration at all to the building?
There is, on the second page, is very, very minimal. They're basically converting one window to a door.
So that's why it doesn't require a special permit?
Right.
It only requires a compliance?
Right, exactly. If you look at there's existing front elevation on the lower portion. Proposed at the top, it's just that one, basically same wall opening, converting it from a window to a door. Everything else is going to remain the same.
I mean, so it was like this at one time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it used to be like
That's
that.
what I'm
Yeah.
worried if it's not gonna look, it's been like this before.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
it's gonna look just like it's drawn here. The only
Right.
difference is you're gonna have, two more signs in front for the two tenancies. It would have to be consistent signage with the sign plan there. But other than that,
It's already pretty tight on parking, but the sense is that a larger restaurant use is more of a draw than drop-off quicker and not.
Correct.
That's the idea.
Correct.
Okay.
It's a permitted use, correct?
it is. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, so Commissioner Coleman, you're still on for Joe.
No comments.
Okay. Any further comments? We're good? Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The item carries unanimously. Next is 176, 186 Linwood Avenue, application of Tony Laffo. Did I get that one right?
Yes.
For a new sign plan, Design Industrial District.
All right, this is down on Linwood Avenue. If you're not familiar with where that is, let me know. In April of 2012, the commission approved the conversion of the majority of this building from what was a warehouse space to a service facility for Honda of Westport. That work is nearing completion. They're looking to establish a sign plan, simply a set of channel letters that says Honda of Westport on the front, and then some directional ovals to tell people where to go for parts or for service. Consistent with similar uses that we have in town, and it complies with the Design Industrial District regs. This is an industrial district. If you know where Linwood Avenue is, between the railroad tracks, on one side of Linwood Avenue, and it backs up to I-95. Yeah, the indoor soccer place is to the right there.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Kennelly, second by Commissioner Jacobson.
Sign plan complies, so.
Complies with the regulations. Anyone else? No. No further comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Item carries unanimously. So we finished all of our agenda except for old business, which will carry over to our executive session at our next regularly scheduled meeting, and the hearing is adjourned.
10:58.